Hello, everybody, and welcome back. You're watching Robot Rallis, and today we are doing the second half of the set review for The Brothers War. In the last video, me and my special guest did all of the cards in multicolor, as well as white, blue, and black. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course, Laura, right back at it again. Glad to be talking about the rest of our colors today.
Yes, indeed. And in the interest of respecting your time and ours, we're going to jump right into it with our first red card, Bitter Reunion.
Mm-hmm.
This is this is a
I
card neutral effect, and it just sticks around to give something haste until end of turn later in the game. I think what they want you to do with it is give like your big artifact or something after you play it haste.
yeah, I am a big fan of these sorts of effects. Like even if it's card neutral, Thrill of Possibility is an instant, but you don't lose much from going from instant speed to sorcery speed. And the fact that you get a little bit of extra stuff later on, pretty alright.
Yeah, I mean cards like this, things that are like card neutral, they're always going to be like a four. Like this is like a classic, or at least a four in most sets. Like it's a
Yeah,
classic.
yeah,
You're
absolutely.
not really losing anything by playing this. There are going to be points where you have a useless land or something, and you can pitch that to
Yeah,
draw two maybe useful cards late in the
yeah,
game,
exactly.
and having a little bit of icing on top. I think I'm comfortable starting this at like a 4.5, and maybe depending on what the set has for me,
Yeah,
it might go a little
I
bit up or
think
a little bit down.
exactly. I'm always happy to have one. I don't know how many more I want after the first, though.
Usually not too many at all, but
No,
yeah,
exactly.
there are definitely formats where it's not the worst. Next up, we have Conscripted Infantry. 3 mana, 3/1 gets you a 1/1 when it dies. I like this card. I think it's honestly more defensive than it is aggressive.
Yes.
3/1s often are more defensive than they are aggressive, sadly.
Yeah. It's also a good sacrifice
Yes.
payoff. There are a couple things that do want you to sacrifice stuff in this set, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of comfortable putting this at I would say about a 4.5, like Bitter Reunion. I'm not like super duper excited to play it, but I don't think I'm going to be disappointed in it. The only time I think I really don't like this card is probably against specifically like sometimes the Soldier deck.
Yeah, when they've got too many 1/1s. I mean, the only
Yeah.
time that I'm not, the time that I'm probably least happy with this card is when I'm trying to be aggressive, and I'm like, I guess this is my 3 drop. Like, it's fine on the defense and it's perfectly serviceable when using it for other stuff, but on the aggressive, even though it has 3 power, it's so fragile. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Like there have been a lot of sets where we've had a 3 mana 4/2, and that card is usually not good at all. The fact that this is spread
yeah,
across two bodies is kind of the only thing going for it, and it puts it just above like
exactly.
filler level for me. But next up,
Yeah,
we have something I think is significantly better, and that is Dwarven Forge Chanter. I
yes.
really like
This
2 mana creatures with prowess.
Yeah, this is another card that's making waves in the pauper community. Prowess is such a powerful ability, especially stapled to a cheap creature, and even having a tiny amount of protection behind it. This thing is going to deal out damage no matter what, even if they remove it straight away. You know,
Yeah,
at worst, it's a 2 mana shock that makes them discard a card. Like it's gonna be pretty all right, no matter what you do.
yeah. And in Pauper, if memory serves, are the witches still legal in mono black?
Kumbaj, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, Kumbaj witches.
that will trigger a ward, and that is a bit painful.
Oh, it will, yes.
Yeah, and I know that
Yeah,
that
no,
was a pretty
that's a
popular
that's a
card.
lot of pain. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a lot of pain if they're trying to shoot down your Forge Chanter with Kumbaj witches.
but yeah, I think the stats line up really well here. 3 toughness is a pretty good number, and then you can find lots of ways to cast a spell to turn this into something that makes your opponent's life a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
So I think I'm on 5. at least in red for this. I think you'd be pretty happy to get this card.
Yeah.
Excavation Explosion is next up, and this is your classic deal 3 for 3. This time it's a sorcery, but it also gives you a Power Stone.
Yeah, I
Look, it looks slow. It looks kind of
yeah.
medium, but that's just what the removal in the set usually looks like now. Like we've gone through it with almost every removal spell. It just looks slower and clunkier than it usually is.
Yeah.
But because of that, you that all the removals that way. So a removal as a whole isn't getting like a downgrade as far as like ratings go. But you do have to start taking these cards with like a grain of salt because they are slower and they are less efficient. But I still think you're going to play this, and you're probably going to play several of them if you have them.
Yeah, it does damage to face. That's really its big thing. It gets through board stalls. It turns neutral trades into very good trades for you, and all the while, if you use it up early, you can get an extra little power stone for you.
Yes, the Power Stone in particular is, I think, what separates this from being like a 5 and what it is, which is, I think, a 5.5, like a solid 5.5. I think you're
Okay.
not going to want to run too many of these, especially since they're sorcery speed and 3 mana and only deal 3. But you could probably play
Mm,
like 3 of them in a deck and still feel good about it, especially if you have a way to use those Power Stone tokens.
mhm.
Next up is Falagi Chain Dancer, which is 4 mana 2/4, and you can pay 2, including with Power Stone mana, to give it double strike until end of turn.
Um, Double Strike's a very powerful ability. I don't know how many. Just quickly check how many equipment are in the set because I know there aren't too many auras, at least not in red.
Just a couple, I
Um,
think.
yeah, there should be a couple equipment here. I know there was one in white that did that equipped to a soldier for cheaper, but you could still equip it here. Type equip. Yeah, so yeah, there's a few. Yes, there's Veterans Power Blade, which kind of goes in white. It's colorless/white. Thran Power Suit buffs up. It is itself an equipment. Um, yeah, so there's a few equipment in the set, and
Yeah.
if you've already picked up one or two of them, I think this card gets a lot stronger.
Yeah, it does kind of turn into like a build your own mech sort of card. It takes a lot of
Yeah,
work, but you're paying the installment plan on playing the equipment, then equipping it, then activating once you start to attack. And I think
yeah,
that all does add up relatively well. But the 4 mana 2/4 stat line to start, and the fact that you kind of do need to either leave mana up or be aggressive to make this work, means I'm not super duper high on it, but I do think it will probably
yeah.
play as like a 5.
Probably. It does survive a lot of the red removal in the set. A lot of it does 3 damage, like we just talked about,
Yeah,
Excavation Explosion.
including the
Um,
white common that we reviewed earlier, the one that deals 3 to tapped creatures.
yes, yes. So for toughness is nothing to scoff at. It's a legitimately powerful
Yeah,
amount.
that is a healthy sized butt, if I do say so.
Oh yes.
Next up, we have a very interesting one, Goblin Blast Runner. This is a single
Yeah.
red mana for a 1/2, and it gets +2/+0 as long as you sacrifice a permanent, and it gains menace. So,
I mean, it's pretty good if you can sacrifice permanents.
yeah, this looks like one of these cards where I think people are going to want to deal with it, but what they should probably be dealing with is the thing that's enabling you to sacrifice things to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in a sacrifice deck, you still want 1 drops so that they can get a little bit of value in before you sacrifice them. So even in that deck, this is still a useful piece. But it's yeah.
Like, I have a feeling that there is a deck you can build if you get enough of these and the enablers that would be very good. But I also think that
Yeah.
you probably won't get so many of these that you can build that deck very often. And when you
Yeah.
don't get enough of these, it's sometimes just going to be a 1 that
It might just
occasionally
fall
attacks with
apart.
Menace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It is the only common one drop in red,
yeah.
this set. So that is important to note. If you're looking for a more aggressive deck, you just kind of have to pick these up to fill up your curve. But in yeah, in other respects, it's not the most inspiring card necessarily.
I would agree. Although I'm surprised you haven't told me that this card is looking to be some kind of pauper staple or something.
I mean, it is.
Oh, it is. I had a feeling.
I mean, kind of. I mean, if you're making like treasures every turn, this is like a
Yeah,
lot better.
or even evolving
Um,
wilds.
yeah, Evolving Wilds, classic. But the problem is, what shell does it slot into? Like, and it's an aggressive creature in a sacrifice deck, but sacrifice decks often either want to be. I don't know. People are looking at it. It's a good stat line,
Just doesn't
has
have a
good
home.
text on it, but it might just not quite fit the deck. Good
Uh,
power level, not necessarily. Yeah.
well, for limited purposes, I think I'm gonna start this card. I don't actually know exactly where I'd like to start it. I kind of want to see how the format shakes out. I kind of consider it something of a build around, and if you can make that build
Yeah.
around work, this will probably perform around a
Yeah,
5.5 or so.
exactly.
And if you don't have that
Exactly.
deck, this card is going to perform like worse than filler.
Yes. 1 mana 1/2 is just going to get chewed up by all the large creatures in the set.
Yeah,
So,
it's just not irrelevant. Like it could be a one
yeah,
mana two two,
exactly.
and like one mana two twos, like a vanilla one mana two two. They're just not that good. They just don't really do anything.
Yeah. They're
Uh,
efficient. They're really efficient, but it's not going to get you
yeah,
much.
but these days you need your creatures to do more. Next up, we have Mishra's Domination, 2 mana enchantment. As long as you control enchanted creature, gets +2/+2. Otherwise, it can't block. A very interesting card.
Yes, this is one of the coolest cards in the common slot for me. Like it's not particularly like it is powerful, I guess. I mean, a 2 mana aura to get +2/+2 is not terrible, especially if you can get additional value on top of it. But it is also just one of the most interesting cards because it is modal, uh, and it fits your game plan no matter what you need it to do.
So I might blow some minds here, but I think in this set, this card's really good.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that the clunky removal, especially like the way that some of it lines up against certain threats, like I think you might end up in some aggressive decks where this card is legit one of the easiest ways to just run away with the game.
100%. Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
probably
Unless you're
gonna.
playing the sacrifice deck, you want this in red.
I think you're probably gonna
Even in
want
the
to side
sacrifice.
this out against like maybe some white and some blue decks, but against black and against red and against green, there's a decent chance that giving anything with two toughness or higher +2/+2 means that you're going to be able to attack for a couple of turns in a row, easy.
Absolutely. And it's a pretty good top deck, even if you don't even if the +2 isn't relevant, like making one of their blockers not be able to do that is relevant.
Yeah, like
So
put this on a flyer, or
yeah.
put it on like something they have on the ground that has reach, and you're pecking in for a
Yes.
lot of damage in the sky. I think this
Now,
card's going to play like in the proper decks. It's going to play like a 6, and then
yeah.
sometimes it'll randomly be playing like a 4 or worse.
Yeah.
It has a
One of
very
the
specific space.
Yes. One of the important one of no, not important. One of the funny interactions with this card is in this set there is a threaten effect. Um, if you put this on an opponent's creature, then threaten it. Well, now you control it, so it gets +2/+2. But when
True.
it goes back,
It
they
won't
still
be able to
can't
block.
block.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
very funny.
little bit. If you put it on their big creature, a little bit of value. You know.
That is a nice interaction.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Mishra's Onslaught. 4 mana, instant. You get two 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens, or all of your creatures get +2/+0 until end of turn.
We kind of saw this effect before in
Strixhaven?
Adventures
Oh,
in
AFR.
the
Yeah, yeah,
Forgotten
yeah.
Realms.
Yeah,
Yeah, in
but that was
AFR.
3 mana, wasn't it? With
Yeah, that was 3 mana.
yeah.
This is not. Um,
Both halves of this card are just very inefficient.
exactly. I mean, 3 mana for a Trumpet Blast is already not great. You do get the modality, I guess the soldier artifacts are more relevant types than the goblins that you got in AFR,
Yeah.
but I'm just not very excited about this card at all.
Neither am I. I think this is a unless you're doing something very specific with it, this is very average at best. I don't even think that the +2/+0 is going to be relevant more than 10% of the time. And then the two one
You
ones,
can, yeah, yeah,
it
you
just
can,
doesn't have enough going for it. I have this at, if I'm being generous, a 4.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a 3.
That's
You
fair.
can sneak some wins out with a trumpet blast. It has happened and it will happen, but if your opponent is playing right, then they shouldn't ever die to this card.
Yeah, I'm picturing situations where I'm dying to the trumpet blast effect, and I feel like a random burn spell or just another creature would probably be about as strong.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, yeah, for it to be better than a burn spell at its cost, you'd have to be hitting with 3 creatures, to deal like 6 damage.
Yeah.
4 for 6 is like probably above rate for what they print at common. But it's still not good. It's still not great.
Too
Yeah, 4 for 6.
situational, too medium.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Next up, we have a Pendragon Strongbull.
Yes.
That's the name. Fair. We have a 3
Yeah.
mana 2/3, and you could sacrifice an artifact to give it +1/+1 and deal 1 damage to each opponent. And I'll be real,
Yeah.
that 1 damage to each opponent is what's doing the heavy lifting.
Goodness. It's a strong bull for a reason.
Yeah, sure is. Um,
Sure is.
so the threat of
I
activation is
think
obviously what this card is going for, but I think
exactly.
that's not even the meat of it. The part you would expect. But I think the strength of this card lies in the fact that in the late game, you're gonna just have a few artifacts on board, and your opponent knows if they ever get to that life total, they're just dead.
Yeah. I mean, especially the fact that the Power Stone can pay for its own sacrifices. Like it
Yes.
pays for the ability, then it sacrifices itself. You don't need to leave up mana in your mountains. You can
Yes.
just leave up the artifacts.
That's quite
That's
good.
pretty valuable.
So, spoiler alert, this actually makes the top 5 commons list quite easily for red anyway.
Yeah.
Um, I want to start this card at around a 6. I think the threat of activation, with an already pretty solid line of stats, as well as the ability to randomly kill your opponent near the end of the game just by sacrificing all of your artifacts, sometimes even creatures because they just won't be able to get through, means that this is going to be one of the better cards in red. And just in general.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Next up, we have Raise to the Ground. This I really like this card. It's very funny. Raise to the
Yeah.
Ground is 3 mana, can't be countered, destroy target artifact. If its mana value is 1 or less, draw a card. So I th-
I
I think the draw card clause is that so you don't feel bad when you cash it in on a Power Stone.
exactly. Yeah.
But I still
I
don't
do
think
think
you.
it's
Do you
I
think this
mean,
card's main deckable?
I think this card is main deckable, mostly because like there are a lot of artifacts running around. Um, like there's gonna be artifact creatures. I wish this did a bit more, but I think if you're not playing white or green, like if you don't have another way of destroying artifacts, Race to the Ground is a very strong option. Um,
Well, let's put it this way: if your opponent has 5 artifact creatures in their deck, are you happy main decking this card?
They have 5 artifact creatures in their deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because it's gonna hit incidentally. If I top deck it, I'll cycle it. If it's yeah,
Well,
I
notably,
think so.
you can in fact target your own Power Stone if you absolutely must. So,
You can.
I think this is a semi main deckable card that you will side out sometimes, but I think if I don't have like Power Stones or some number of expendable artifacts to catch this in on, I don't want to main deck it. Because I do not ever want to be in a situation where this just does not have a target and I'm just facing down something I can't deal with on the ground that isn't an artifact.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I think I'm comfortable starting it out as like a 4.5, possibly a little bit higher in a lot of matchups. But like, I think this card is pretty obviously like a sideboard 6.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. A big thing for me is while we're only talking about the commons and uncommons in this review, the rares you will see rares,
Mm,
and a decent number of the rares are artifacts as well, and that's where a lot of power comes from. So I th- I think I'm gonna rate it higher than you
that's
will.
fair. Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Yes.
I mean, this may very well end up being a format where Race to the Ground is just you'll take almost as many of them as you can get.
Yeah.
Unlike the next
Well, that's
card.
the thing. I think. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I think this format has the potential to go in cycles of everyone drafts so many artifacts, so race to the ground just shoots through the roof, but everyone's now got race to the ground, so artifacts plummet, and then it just like it's this like chasing wave of are artifacts good or not right now?
Well, at the risk of getting into some theory about this set, I think what's going to happen is there's only ever going to be so many Race to the Ground. I think as time goes on in the format, people are just going to start taking the artifacts more highly because at the end of the day, they can technically fit in most decks, and people are going to start settling into
Yeah.
colors a little later. There's always going to be more
Yes.
artifacts than there will be Race to the Ground. Just the nature
Yes.
of limited. So it's going to be difficult to get so many raised to the grounds that you have too many against an artifact deck. But
Mm,
it's a card where when it's bad, it's going to be at least passable as long as there's something on board for you to cash it in on. And then when it's good, it's going to be really good, like just a premium removal spell, which is what a 6 usually
absolutely.
is. So,
Yes. Yeah.
like, I think I'm still on the 4.56 plan. It'll just take
Yeah.
time to see whether or not the main deck Race to the Ground is around the 6 level in the format, which it very well might be. But the next card, I
Yeah.
don't think is going to do that at all. This is Rock Hunter. 2 mana, 3/1 with
Yeah.
reach.
It's a card.
I
It'll
guess.
attack.
It,
It'll
it will
block.
attack and it will block and it will die when it blocks and it'll often die when it attacks. I don't like that it has reach because it doesn't really dissuade you from attacking with your flyer. It just will trade with the smaller ones, which all more or less cost about the same amount that this does anyway. Like usually you're gonna like this will trade for like some 3 mana flyers, but anything bigger and that 3/1 is just not doing it.
Yeah.
I just feel like I want more out of this card than it's giving me. If it was a 1/3 with reach, I still probably wouldn't like it. Reach just isn't really the kind of ability I want on a 3/1. So I'm gonna give this card
Yeah.
a 4 and say that
Yeah.
it is a 2 you can play and it will play, but you're never gonna be like, wow, thank goodness I got my Rock Hunter on turn 2. Game would have been lost without
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Sibling Rivalry, 4 mana. This is our threaten effect, our act of treason, if you will. Just does that and gives you a Power Stone token. This is an archetype dependent card, definitely
Yes.
involved in either extremely aggressive decks or decks that are looking to specifically sacrifice creatures in the best way possible
Yeah.
by using your opponent's creatures.
Absolutely. Yes.
I think in this set,
Um,
the threaten being 4 mana isn't as bad because a lot of the ways to sacrifice creatures are activated abilities, and some of those can be paid for with Power Stones.
yeah, absolutely. I think yeah, I'm a generally a fan of threatens, because I mean in a late game scenario as well, it's very powerful. It's not great in your opening hand necessarily, but it lets you map out lines where you do get a big 2-for-1.
So if you have ways in your deck to sacrifice something after you've stolen it, this card goes up massively. If you're in an aggressive deck and this is like one of your medium to top end cards, it also goes up massively. If all you're doing is just in a random deck and you're stealing something because this is a card you're playing, this card will not do a lot for you on average. But I still think
No,
that despite all that, it's probably going to play around a 4.5 in the average deck. And then in the deck that it belongs in, it'll play pretty close to like a 5.5, 6.
yeah, yeah, I think so.
Tomacool Scrapsmith, 2 in a red, 2/1. It does the mill 3 cards thing, and this time you can get an
Mhm.
artifact from among them. So,
It's a bit more flexible than some of the other ones we've looked at so far. We weren't high on the blue one. We weren't high on the black one. We were medium on the white one. Um, I not
well, I'll
it.
tell
I
you one
don't.
thing. The green
Yeah,
one is much better than this one is, because the green one has a solid type line and like stats and
yeah,
stuff. 3/2 for
yes,
3 as like your baseline a lot of the time is not going to feel very good.
yeah. You want a
When
three
you
two
get
for
the
three with a
artifact, it's
good
going to feel
ability.
good. When you get the artifact, it's going to feel solid. The 2/1 body doesn't do a whole lot after that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and the 3/2 body doesn't really do that much more than the 2/1 does. So
No, not really.
really, the meat of this card is mill 3 cards. You maybe get an artifact, and I don't really think that's a card I'm very, very, very eager to play.
No, not. Yeah, when unearth is your main payoff for throwing things into the graveyard,
Yeah.
and artifacts are often like in this set, the artifact creatures are the ones with unearth. I don't. I just don't see it. I just don't see it.
So
Yeah.
you're milling 3 cards. How often would you have to miss to be sad about this card?
I mean, if it was okay, if it's a 3 mana 2/1, draw an artifact. That's good. So if
Yeah,
you're
it
hitting
feels
every
pretty good.
time, you're happy.
Yeah.
If you're hitting every time, you're happy. I mean, look, the fail state isn't horrendous like the blue one was. Um, like a 3 mana 3/2 is fine. It's not good, but it's
Yeah.
fine.
I think the floor is
Um,
just not very. The floor is not obscenely low, but the ceiling, it's not really that high. Like it's just
it's
not.
not that high either. This card is. I think this card is actually quite similar to Rock Hunter,
Yeah.
in that you're gonna play them.
Yeah.
You're gonna just have some stats
You just-
on the board so that you can have creatures and attack with them. But you're not, or like it's nothing to write home about.
so a little bit of a spoiler alert, but in green, there is a 3 mana common, same casting cost, just 2 and a green instead, and it's a 3/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you just get a Power Stone. I like that card
Yeah,
so much more.
that card is so much more consistent
Yes, it's
and
like it does exactly what you want it to do every single
exactly.
time. It's very simple. You get the 3/2 and you get the Power Stone. There's no, oh, what am I getting? Whatever I'm getting is medium. You're getting the full value right there. And I
Yeah,
like that card a lot more than
absolutely.
I like this one. I'm giving this Scrapsmith a 4. It is a 4 if I've ever seen one. It's no part of it is exciting to me.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
the next card is Unleash Shell.
I love
Um,
this name. I love it. Unleash Shell.
and I've seen some of the puns
So
in this
good.
set, and to be honest, most of them kind of bomb. if you ask me.
But the real question is this a bomb?
Uh, I would say no,
I
but this
wouldn't
is a
say
good
so.
removal spell.
Yeah,
This is solid. The 2 damage to the permanence controller is nice, and I
yeah.
think I how many planeswalkers are there in the set? I think what, two?
It's either two or three.
Oh no,
Yes.
there's Urza, the meld Urza, but if that's happening, you have bigger problems. And then there's just
Yeah.
Teferi.
There's a Teferi, there's a Planeswalker.
So
Okay, it
this
wants
can
me
kill
to.
Teferi. Um,
Yeah, so there's Sahili, Teferi, and then flipped Urza are the
yeah,
three
this kills all of
Planeswalkers
those.
in the set.
So if for some reason you see those, this will kill them.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't kill flipped Urza,
Oh well,
but if
yeah,
your opponent has flipped Urza, already
you're in
you're already
trouble.
gone, my friend.
You're in some
I'm
trouble.
so
Yeah.
sorry. Um,
But the real meat of this is obviously dealing damage to creatures and 5 toughness. There aren't a lot of things with higher than 5 toughness that aren't the big giant artifacts. So it's really difficult for you to get a mana advantage on this because most of those giant artifacts usually have 6 toughness or higher.
yeah, yes. A lot
But
of them have six toughness.
but there are creatures that you are going to want to kill, and if you want to get them dead, this is a way to do it. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't
especially if
really.
it's
Go ahead.
like this doesn't. Yeah, this is gonna kill a lot of this kills all the useful uncommons. Like the two color uncommons, all those engine cards.
Mm,
A lot of really useful rares in this set have like four toughness or something. I feel like this card, it's a big price to pay.
mm.
But if you use it judiciously and hit the right target, it's gonna actually give you the right numbers.
Yeah. I just think that a lot of the cards you're going to hit with this, they're going to be 4 mana or less most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're,
Yeah.
you're just
I
going to
think
have
I
to
think mana
deal with
wise,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think mana wise you're not happy with it a lot of the time, but
You'll still play
I
it.
think sometimes you just need to do it. Yeah.
Yes. Removal is still important, and this is honestly one of the less restrictive spells as far as removal goes. And
Yeah,
for that reason,
absolutely.
I'm content giving it a 5.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whirling Strike is next. This is, your normal combat trick in red. I made an allusion to it because I figured we had something like this, and wouldn't you know it, we do.
Yes.
+2/+0, first
Right
strike, and
there.
trample. I think what really pushes this is the trample.
Mm.
You can put it on your big artifact and not just kill their creature, but also blow past it and deal damage to their face.
Yeah, without the trample, it just becomes, the same as a one in a white destroy target blocking creature. Like that's a card that I'm sure we've seen somewhere.
Yes.
But with the trample, it's destroy that creature and deal like 1, 2, 3 damage to them.
Yeah, God forbid you have a creature with Death Touch, which there's only, I think, one
Ooh.
of that
I think we've only
uncommon.
seen one. Yeah, we only saw one common and uncommon with Death Touch.
Yeah. There's not a
So there
lot.
may be more in the artifacts. Could
Yeah.
be more in the artifacts.
Point being, this is a combat trick. If you're in the market for a combat trick, this will do exactly what you want it to do. It's relatively inexpensive, but most of the time, I'm not really interested in combat tricks. The board, it feels like it's going to be gummed up pretty often in this game, and once you're tussling with like the real big mechas fighting back and forth, cards like this get better. So I think I'm going to give it
Mm,
a slightly higher grade than usual. Probably going to put it at like a 4.
yeah,
Usually I give
yeah,
combat
makes
tricks like
sense.
this like a 3.5 because I don't usually like combat tricks unless I'm explicitly in an aggressive deck. But sometimes they just rise above. So I think I'm going to
Yeah,
start this one at filler level and give it a chance to impress me.
good.
So that brings us to uncommons for red. And we start with Arms Race. This is an
Yes.
interesting one.
So this is a very interesting one. I I looked. I think they designed this card for standard in a deck that you can really build it with. But
Yeah.
for limited,
There's
I
going to be a
feel
lot of
like
time where this just does nothing.
yeah, it's you've just paid 4 mana to put like the problem is you might look at it and say, "Oh, activate the ability 4 mana." You put a creature into the battlefield. That sounds great. That's pretty efficient if you're putting like a 6 drop in or something. But you also have to consider that you paid 4 mana the first time as well.
Yeah.
So you're 8 mana for one creature, 12 mana for two, 16 for three. It gets better each time, but it's not great.
So
You
so
can you can use you can
Power
use
Stones.
power stones to activate this, but you could also be using those power stones to just cast the artifact card.
Yes.
So
So I think the thing that did it for me to decide that this card is extremely bad is to think about the line of play. So turn 4, I spend an entire card out of my hand and my turn to play Arms Race. I am down a card. Next turn, I pay 4 mana, which is basically my whole turn, and I spit out a creature. And I don't know, let's say it's like a 10/10 or something. I
yeah,
attack my
biggest creature
opponent
in the
with
set.
it. Yeah. I attack my opponent with it, and they. Does that 10/10 have a trample?
Could not tell you. I'd
I'm,
hope
I'm
so, but
looking
I
right
doubt
now.
it.
And that
I would
that 10,
hope
it
so,
does have
but
trample. So
does have trample.
my opponent, maybe they chump block, maybe they don't. Let's not even say that it's a 10/10. Let's say it's just like a 8/9 or something like that. My opponent chump
Yeah,
blocks with the worst creature they have. So I've spent Arms Race, the card Arms Race, one card out of my hand, so that I could put one of the best creatures in my deck into play and trade it for my opponent's worst creature because the creature I put onto the battlefield is leaving at the beginning of the next end step. That is a really bad trade for me.
yeah. It's really not good. Like even if you didn't have to like if it didn't give haste and it didn't sacrifice, it still wouldn't be great.
Yeah, it would just
And
be like
yet,
sometimes it would be good.
yeah, and yet here we are.
This
This card
card
is a
is very
trap.
bad.
This card is a massive trap.
This
Don't
is
fall
an
for it.
unsupported archetype. There are no cards with Annihilator in the set. Do not play this.
Yes.
Giant Cindermaw is next. This is a 3 mana 4/3 with trample, and players can't gain life. What a interesting and simple
I mean,
card.
yeah.
This card's good.
This card's just great, honestly. Like good stats, aggressive play. There's not much life gain in the set, but it doesn't hurt to turn it off.
This is a
So
card in a set full of extremely mediocre creatures, and this hits so much harder than almost anything else for 3 mana.
yeah, exactly.
Like most
You're
of
gonna
the
be jumping straight over the top of
yeah,
things.
so like Giant Cindermaw with that +2/+2 enchantment makes a 5/4
Oh,
with trample, which means your opponent is not going to do anything but either remove it or double block it. Like
yeah,
that early in the
absolutely.
game, it's very, very difficult to put something into play that's going to profitably block this, or just a single creature trade with it. There's actually not a whole lot in the set that just. No, wait, that's a 6/5. My bad.
Yeah,
Whoopsie.
even a 6/5, so it gets out of range of the biggest red
Yes.
removal.
Uh, this is just a big creature. I want to say that it's going to easily start out as a 6. When your opponent plays this on turn 3 and you're on the draw, you're going to be like, oh, okay, I got to do stuff right now. And it's not always going to be good enough. This is one of those creatures that with a little bit of support can run away with the game, and we've seen there are cards that can support it.
Yeah. And sometimes this is just a card that trades 1 for 2. Sometimes they block with their 2 drop and their 3 drop. You kill them both and you just say, you know what? I got my mana's worth out of this.
Yeah. Next up, we have Horned Stoneseeker. This is a 2 mana 2/2 with Menace, and when it enters the battlefield, you create a Power Stone. And when it leaves the battlefield, you sacrifice a Power Stone. This card's great.
Yeah. It's, you know, a 2/2 with menace. This is another great target to throw Mishra's Domination on. Um, I think the Power Stone isn't going to be incredibly relevant. It is relevant that it sacrifices the Power Stone,
Yeah,
because you can then get additional triggers off of that if you like. But
and
you do, if you want to activate that on your turn, you'd have to sacrifice the Stone Stick, which sacrifices the Power Stone. So it's, it's a little bit of a hoop to jump through, not
um,
too hard.
notably, if you don't have a power stone to sacrifice, you don't get like arrested or anything. You just
No,
don't sacrifice anything. So there are
yep,
going to be
you've already gone.
situations where you just have blasted through your power stone somehow, and that doesn't matter in the slightest. Um,
Yeah,
I think if you think about this as if you really, really need the power stone, you can keep this back. That this card, it looks a little different than it usually does. Because you don't actually have to run this into your opponent's creatures if you don't have to. There's no it must attack clause, although you'll probably be turning this sideways very often. It's aggressive. It comes with two things attached to it, its own body and the power stone. It feeds into aggressive strategies as well as sacrifice strategies uh, in multiple ways. I'm just fond
yeah,
of it. This is a premier two drop, if you ask me. And for that reason, I think I'm going to give it a 5.5.
yeah, absolutely.
I think the only downfall is that you do need to be able to use that Power Stone, or this and the Power Stone together, for it to be like an actual card that matters a lot in the late game. Otherwise, it's just a very efficient 2-1-2.
Yeah,
Next up, we have Mishra. 3 mana, 2-1 with haste. You could pay it 1, tap, discard a card, draw a card. And it also makes mana if you discard artifact cards once each turn. Notably, you
yeah,
don't have to use the loot ability to do that. It's just whenever you discard one or more artifact cards.
yes. So I mean, I'm less high on this than I was on Urza.
Yeah.
Um, Notably, Urza had a bit more of a defensive stat line. This one's very vulnerable.
Yes.
Though making mana is a pretty powerful ability, and especially activating that ability and going mana positive. It gives you card advantage. It gives you card selection and mana. That's pretty good.
Yes. So I think what they're kind of setting you up to do is have a situation where you draw this in the late game, you play it for 3, activate it for 1, pitch something with Unearth, get 2 of your mana back, and you've only spent 2 mana for the turn, and now you can kind of use that
Yeah,
Unearth ability maybe.
absolutely.
I think
Yeah,
that's the line of play that they were kind of thinking about when they made this. I like this card. I think it's definitely solid. The power and toughness are obviously like a drawback, but I don't think you're going to be tussling with this card. This is definitely more of a I want to tap this thing to draw and discard every turn if I can help it.
100%. Yeah,
Problem is you can't just discard artifacts infinitely, and the fact that it does cost 1 to use means that you're not really going to want to play this in a deck that's trying to swing at your opponent. This is more of like a I'm trying to tinker towards getting big artifacts onto the battlefield style red card.
yeah, yeah. If you're attacking with Mishra, you're either so far ahead or so far behind that in either case it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And notably, we've looked through and we've kind of been giving the cards that are the most aggressive and the most geared towards hitting your opponent the highest grades. This card goes completely against that strategy,
It
yeah,
does,
if you ask
yes.
me. And so the best it does there is be a looter that is better at drawing you lands than it is spells. And for that reason, I think I'm going to give it a slightly lower grade, just because of the context of it being in red. But I'm still going to give this card a 5. I think it's still just good enough to where you're going to probably play it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, 100%.
Monastery Swiftspear is next. We kind of all know what's up with this card. It
Yeah.
goes in a specific deck. If you're not doing that, if you're not activating that prowess ability to attack for big amounts of damage, it's probably not doing much for you. This is
It's
a
still,
aggro build around card. It's quite strong. It's a constructed card, but in draft
yeah,
it just does not always get there.
exactly. I mean, it's still your best one drop in red in common and uncommon, but it suffers. It has the same base stat line as Goblin Blast Runner, the other one drop we were looking at. And if in either case, if you can't turn on their ability, it
They're
gets a
much
lot
worse. Oh
worse.
yeah.
So yeah,
So with that in mind, I think I'm comfortable giving Monastery Swiftspear in most decks something close to a 2.5 to 3, and in the deck where it's good, like maybe some type of a blue-red variant, this card can be quite potent, somewhere around a 5.5.
yes, yeah,
Now we have Obliterating Bolt, and this card is very good.
yes. This this is
Exile
one of
is
the cards
relevant. 4 damage is relevant. Sorcery speed
very
isn't very
relevant.
fun, but this card's very efficient. I'm giving this a
It's
6.
only 2 mana. Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the most important cards in the set.
Yeah,
Not only for like drafting sense, but also when you're playing the game. If your opponent's on red, you need to be thinking about this card. Have they used an obliterating bolt yet? Do you think they've got it? Because putting out your strongest threat and being like, it's got 4 toughness, they have to at least put in 2 cards for it, and then just getting obliterated doesn't feel great. So
yeah. The efficiency of this card is unlike almost any of the other removal spells in the set. And for that
yeah,
reason, I think I'm actually changing from a 6 to a 6.5. I think there's definitely going to be packs where this is just the best card in the pack, and it's close to just a first pickable card.
yeah,
Next up,
absolutely.
Pyrrhic Blast. 4 mana, sacrifice a creature, deal damage equal to its power to any target draw card.
This is an instant, which
Yes. Which
which does a
means
lot
you
for
can
it.
use it in response to removal, which
Exactly. So
is
you
probably
can
the main
kind of get an
reason.
extra.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of get an extra card's worth out of it. If this was a sorcery, it would see 0 play. As it is, it's fine. I'm not particularly enthused by it. That extra draw card is nice, but you're not going to be able to use it immediately if you're casting a 4 mana spell. The other problem is if you don't use it and you've just left up 4 mana on their turn in case. What are you doing? You need some good activated abilities for it. So
I think
yeah,
what they want you to do with this is sacrifice creatures that are already on their way to the graveyard, specifically creatures with unearth that you have unearthed.
yeah,
Uh, Otherwise, your only hope for this card is to use it in response to removal, or once one of your creatures has been nullified or otherwise won't do anything. I guess you could, throw one of your really big creatures at them, but if you just have to sacrifice a creature that you paid the full price on, this card isn't very good. It's just okay.
yeah. Like I think you have to be like unless it's killing your opponent, you have to be getting a removal spell out of them, or else it's just
Yeah.
not worth it.
Like the fact that it replaces itself isn't something that makes it good. It's something that makes it at the very least playable. I don't really think
Yeah,
that
I
makes it
mean,
good.
yeah, at the highest level, you're you've sacrificed like the best you can do is you've sacrificed a creature and you've spent 1 card to draw a card, kill their creature, and stifle a removal spell. So at best, it's a 3 for 2,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, still not amazing.
It asks a lot of you, and it doesn't really give you that much. And the lines
No,
of play where I see this being played on average are very convoluted and require a lot of mana. So I think I'm on 3 for this.
yeah, fully agree with that.
Sardian Cliff Stomper is next. This is a 2 mana 0/4. And as long as you control four or more mountains and it's your turn, it gets plus X plus O, where X is the number of mountains you control. Well, this is a mono red card.
Yes, yeah,
And
it's definitely a mono red card. This is,
yes.
yeah. So each color has their mono color card, and this is the one for red. Um, I think if you're in mono red, it's pretty good. If you're not in mono red, it's not. Um,
So,
Even like I can see a late game scenario where you've got like four mountains, three islands, say, and then it becomes a 2 mana 4/4. But it's pretty late on.
yeah, there
Pretty
in a
late
two
on.
color deck, there are many games where you will not have four mountains in play. It's just
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
bottom line. And if your goal is to play a creature like this, where you're hoping to beat down with it, or have it be efficient and take your opponent's life total down, um, you actually want to be playing fewer lands, which means getting to four mountains is even less likely. Which is actually something going against it in the mono red deck, although not by much. In the kind of mono red deck I think this format is looking to give you, you actually probably don't want to play 17 lands. I would actually try to aim for 15 if I could help it, and just if I can get the cards to make that happen, like Monastery Swift Spear, like Obliterating Bolts, and like the Horn Stone Seeker and Giant Cindermaw, pretty much like all the namesake uncommons and commons, then
Yeah.
you want to play fewer lands, not more of them.
Yeah,
However, this card
absolutely.
I think is still good. I think this is a constructed card, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I can definitely see it being played in constructed where you you could be pretty certain it's going to be a 2 mana 4/4 pretty
Yes.
early on. Um, I mean, because the thing is, you're really only losing one turn's worth of attacks with it because it's not going to have haste on turn two. You play it on turn two, it would normally attack on turn three. Turn four, you play your fourth mountain.
Yeah.
Good to go. But also, a problem with this card is in constructed is that if like traditionally mono red decks cut down on lands just to run more cheaper threats, and I wonder if this works.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting question. I don't know if it's actually going to work out.
Yeah. The like, if it just cost more mana to somehow make that work, it would be a little easier to turn it on because there's
Yeah,
but you have to hit your fourth land to make this work, and it has to be a
yeah.
mountain, so it's a little more
If it was
difficult.
a yeah, if it was a 3 drop that required three mountains,
Yeah, it'd
I
be
could see it being
much
a
easier.
bit more boring. It'd be a 3 mana 4/4, but it'd be a 3 mana 3/4 at the time.
So as far as limited
Which
goes,
is not great.
I think in mono red, of course, it's at least playable. I think if you're not mono red, this card is a two. Defender tribal is not really an archetype. Uh,
No,
and if you're
very
playing
sadly.
mono red, I think this card is going to be quite good. I think if you somehow end up in mono red immediately, this card's going to be a first pickable.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't. Yeah, yeah.
The Fall of Krug is next. This is a uncommon sweeper. Of course, it
Yes.
only deals one to each creature that player controls. It doesn't deal to yours, which is quite interesting. It also destroys a land and deals three to that person. Um,
Yeah. So I at 6 mana, destroying a land is probably not as impactful as it might look otherwise.
no.
3 damage in the late game to a player is legitimately powerful. Like that's an extra turn's worth of damage often, or like half a turn, which can steal a game out. And 1 damage sweeping up all those little soldier tokens that keep popping around, all those 2 1s, 3 1s. Um, Much like any sweeper, I don't want to run too many of these, especially with 6 mana.
Yeah, honestly, I think what they did was they took three niche abilities, they stapled them together, and said, have this card. And I don't really usually want to play any of these in the main. I would not play Destroy Land. I would not play Deal 3 damage to a player if it didn't say to a creature as well. And I wouldn't play Deal 1 damage to each creature that my opponents control out of the in the main either. I think this is 100% a sideboard card, and I don't even think it's a good sideboard card. I think it's aggressively average.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you
Yeah.
see a lot of 1/1s floating around, maybe you bring one of these things in, and then you're going to spend your entire turn doing it, and maybe it feels good. But I'm not on it. I'm on a sideboard which is a 2.
Mm-hmm.
Time for the final color
Yeah.
before we get to colorless and lands, and that's green. Start out with commons, and here we go. Here's one already. Argothian Opportunist.
Yes.
3 mana, 3/2. You get a Power Stone token.
Solid.
This
Just
makes
so
top
solid.
5. This makes top 5 in green very easily. I don't remember where on top 5 I put it, but this card is quite good. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
So you don't have to worry about the fail case. Everything is just right there.
Yeah. It is consistent. You know exactly what it's doing, and it's not like you can always build around it. This card you can expect to see one. Hopefully, you can unless it is so popular, people just snap it up immediately. You can hope to see one. You can think about this card as a common and know that it's going to help you out.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a way to use those Power Stones, like any kind of way at all, then obviously it's better than just average. So I think I'm comfortable starting this at a 5. And there's worlds where it's a little worse, but not very many. Next up, we have Argothian Sprite, which is 2 mana 2/2. It can't be blocked by artifact creatures, and you could pay a lot of mana to put 2 permanent +1/+1 counters on it. I like this card.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
So like, if you think about it, that like 7 mana is a lot, yes, but by the time you get to the late game, the things that are going to be doing the most blocking are going to be those big artifact creatures. And the ability to have a 2/2 that has relevance in the late game is a little difficult to overstate. And this is one that not only gives you a mana sink, but also just has a relevant line of text aside. And there aren't a lot of playable 2s that have that kind of power in the set. Like, a lot of the creatures have been quite meek, quite mediocre, not very good. And I think this one maintains its relevance. And there are going to be turns where you just, tap a few power stones in your mana and put 2 counters on this, maybe still get to cast a spell. And then you have a 4/4 that would otherwise have just been a random 2 mana dork.
Yeah. It's a 2 mana 2/2. Like, how wrong can you go?
Yep. If you start with 2 mana 2/2 as your baseline, in this set that's actually a little bit a little unexpected. Like, you usually wouldn't expect cards to be as good as Argothian Sprite is. And in the context of how deep powered these creatures are, I think it just shines. So I'm giving this one a 4.5, and I think it has the easy potential to rise to a 5. Blanchwood Prowler. Look, I'm just going to lay it out on the table. I like this card.
Yes, this is the mill cycle, but you get a land card. I think I agree. This card is what did I write down for this card? I said that it was Blanchwood Prowler. My first impression was no. Because it's kind of a 2 mana 1/1, but you draw a card. But you can just choose for it to be a 2 mana 2/2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this card, because you have that choice, I think this card is a lot better.
Yes. So you are usually going to hit at least one land. Usually. So you will often, most of the time, or at least a good bit of the time, have a choice. And the fail case is that you don't get a choice, and it is just a vanilla tutu that has milled you three
Hmm.
cards. And that mill is not useless, but this card I just think feels so much better than the 3 mana 2/1 that might get you an artifact. One, because you're definitely putting more lands than you are artifacts in every single deck you're ever going to play in this format. And two, because the lands are a lot more useful than some of those artifacts are going to occasionally be, especially in a set where
Yes.
you're trying to cast big things.
Yeah. Blanchwood Prowler doesn't ask you to do anything specific.
Yeah,
It just works. No matter what you're doing, you're gonna want lands, or you're gonna want a 2 mana 2/2.
yeah, it's not
It just
extremely
works.
impressive, but like the floor is high enough to where I'm not going to be upset that I'm playing this card, and the ceiling, while it's not high, is at a place where I'm comfortable playing it. So I'm giving this card a 4.5 because I think it's above filler. I think it is serviceable, and you're going to be not disappointed when you're playing this on two, unless your goal is to beat down the opponent, in which case Argothian Sprite's a little bit more your speed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Burrowing Razemaw, speaking of 3 mana 4/2s like we were talking about earlier,
Yes.
uh, this, when it dies, you mill 4 cards. Um, I don't really know how I should be evaluating mill 4 cards. It's going to be on a deck by deck basis, but my
Yeah.
first
It's a
instinct is to say that this card is not good.
Yeah, I mean, so the way I see the mill four cards is it's never going to be a downside for you. Like if there's no mill deck here, like blue's not trying to mill you out. So it's never going to hurt you. It's never going to make it more likely that you lose the game from it. Uh, but even still, yeah, it's just going to die to something like a 2 mana 2/1. Although it's possible that they don't have a 2 mana 2/1. You know, if they're playing higher up the curve, this card gets a lot better. But even still, it's a bit rough.
Yeah, like we evaluated the 3 mana 3/2 that like sometimes is a 3 mana 2/1 that gets you an artifact as not very good, and both sides of that card just destroy this thing.
Yeah,
Like imagine you
absolutely.
play that mediocre card and it's a 2/1 that happened to draw you an artifact, and then you get to block this. You just feel incredible about playing a
Oh,
bad card.
absolutely. Yeah.
I think the best thing this card has
Goodness.
going for it is that if you use Epic Confrontation, the common fight spell, that it becomes a 5/4. And 5/4 tussles very well. I think that's the best point of pride. And the best point of pride is that another card can make it slightly better. I think this card is a 3. I don't think you're going to be very happy with this card at all. Play almost any other
No.
3. Play the Argothian Opportunist. It actually does something.
Yes, absolutely.
Sentinel Stalwart is next. This is a 1 mana 1/1 that can tap and tap something else to add 1 mana of any color. I do not know how I should be evaluating this. I've looked at it a few times, and I gotta say, I don't know. Like,
I
I
I
like that you
so
can
I'm
tap.
I'm not the highest on this. Yeah.
I like that you could tap Power Stones and this to create mana of any color, but
I don't think this is going to be a great player
no, I agree.
in limited because are you tapping like there are not that many one drops. Are you going to be tapping your 2 drop to add another mana? You can be tapping Power Stones, but you're not going to be getting a Power Stone until around turn 3 or so.
Yeah, like the things that you're trying
Um,
to ramp into are usually those big artifacts.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it gives you, yeah,
So even the ones with
1 mana
prototype,
dorks are good. Yeah.
even the ones with prototype, you can pay the front half of those cards with Power Stones anyway. So this card is just like a very convoluted Power Stone turning itself into like colored mana. I look, I'm not saying that Argothian Opportunist just beats all of these other commons, but like I would just play an Argothian Opportunist over this card most of the time. Not only is it a better body, but it gives me mana that the Sentinel Stalwart's basically going to be doing anyway. And like
Yeah.
the 1/1 body is so irrelevant to me in most games. In fact, in almost every single game, that I think I'm just happier with like almost any of the other cards we've seen. I don't like Sentinel Stalwart at all. The only way that I think this card does anything is if you're flying by the seat of your pants, trying to make a multicolor deck work.
That's where I landed with this as well, is this is the glue that holds your splash together.
And I don't think
It's
it's
not
very good glue.
yeah.
You're playing a bad card to justify your splash. Um, like, yeah, I just don't like it. Epic Confrontation is next. By the way, Sentinel Stalwart, I'm giving a 2. It is an unsupported archetype, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Epic Confrontation, +1/+2 in fight. Sorcery speed. We're used to having fights that are better than this, or just different. Either instant speed, or they give you more power on the front face, or they bite instead of fight, and no buffs.
Yeah. I mean 2 mana is, I wish it was +2/+2,
Yeah,
but
but it is a
even
reprint, so
still,
they kind of want to
it is
they
yeah,
wanted
they
this.
can't
But
yeah.
I
They wanted
I
that
looked
one
at
in
this a
particular.
lot, and I came to the conclusion that when you look at the other commons, this actually does a pretty good job. So we haven't gotten there yet, but
Yeah.
there's Hoarding Recluse, which is a 2/3 with Death Touch. Excellent with this, becomes a 5 toughness creature. Perimeter Patrol, a
Yes.
3/3 for 3, becomes a 5 toughness creature. There's a 5/5 at common. Even like the Burrowing Razor Maw becomes a 5/4, which tussles pretty well. The Blanchwood Prowler can be a 2/2, which becomes a 3/4, and there's 4 mana creatures that will die to that. Argothian Sprite, 3/4, a lot of 4 mana creatures for that too. And Argothian Opportunist becomes a 5/4, which also we've noted tussles pretty well. I think Epic Confrontation actually meshes with some of those cards quite well. And the fact that there's not as much efficient removal at common means that you don't have to be as worried about being blown out at instant speed when you try to cast this.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The stat lines between creatures are quite tight. Like there are some, gigantic creatures that Epic Confrontation just isn't going to be able to defeat unless they, block beforehand you do the second main. Um this card just works.
Yeah, you're gonna play it in your green decks, and it'll function kind of as the better removal that green has, unfortunately, and
Yes.
in that way, you're gonna run it like a 5.5 to 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, ain't gonna be winning any awards, but yeah, you do what you can in your green. Ooh, here's an interesting one: Fog of War, 3 mana.
Uh,
You gain 1 life for each creature on the battlefield. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures with power 3 or less. So, most things that are not big dumb artifacts will actually have 3 power or less.
mhm.
So, what they want you to do is swing your big artifact, and that it gets blocked by a bunch of things. And then you go, haha,
Yeah.
you've activated my trap card. I cast Fog of
Yeah,
War.
and you
I kill
yeah.
your things, and my thing doesn't die. I don't know how often that's
That's
going to happen.
Yeah, that's a massive blowout and a massive the ceiling for that is so high, but the difference between that and the regular use case of just
Yeah.
oh they're attacking me, time to fog of war is so far.
You need
Fog of
a
war
lot for
is
that to go right.
I'm just not a fan. I cannot justify fog effects, even fog effects that you can play around and make into a strategy almost. I just can't justify
So,
running them.
so yeah, the lines of play with this card, they just don't seem very good to me. Like you need a lot of stuff to go right for this card to be the blowout that I described the first time. And if you're in that situation where like you're attacking with your big thing, I think a lot of opponents are honestly just going to start like chumping with their useless creatures, especially if the board becomes any kind of stall. because in this format more than some other ones, I think what people are looking for is some kind of way to just push through the damage. So they're not going to try and like set up some kind of triple block, because then all of the creatures that were previously held back in the board stall are going to be able to attack. So
Yeah.
cards like Fog of War, I think, just are almost never going to result in the blowout that they look like they're designed to do. And the life
Yeah.
gain is so incredibly irrelevant. It's like they thought, you know what, we got to give this card a buff. Let's make it do something cool, like
The
gain like
only
7
possible way they
life.
could make the only way they can make this card worse is if they made it a sorcery. I think that's it.
That would be quite funny, and that it would probably still result in basically the same thing happening. People just chump.
Yeah. Can we actually, okay, 1 second here. I would love, just quick side note, I would love a 0 mana fog, but it's sorcery speed. You know? What are you gonna do with it? That's a weird card.
I guess you activate prowess, yeah, so that you can attack for no damage. Easy,
Exactly. Oh no, you play it. You play it with the questing beast.
of course,
Damage can't be prevented. Don't
of
forget,
course.
that's like line
Unblockable
4 on
questing
that
beast.
card.
Kill their Teferi.
Don't.
Yeah,
Wow.
that actually came up. I was playing Cube, and I attacked with my questing beast, and someone blocked with their Progenitus.
Mm-hmm.
And
That
then
is
they
how protection works.
and then
It
they
is
lost the game
prevention. Yeah,
because
well.
I thought that Progenitus would kill me.
Yes.
The only out
Yep,
I had was they
absolutely.
block, and they blocked. It was fun. Anyway, Fog of War's a 1.
Yes.
Card is not good. You should not play it. Gaia's Gift is next. This is a combat trick. This is a combat trick. Um, Reach, Trample,
It's a
Hexproof, and
lot.
Indestructible. That's a lot of words.
This creature is not dying.
Yes.
I can tell you that much. It
Yeah.
is not dying. It
So
is blocking whatever the heck it wants, and it is getting in whatever damage it wants.
I think I like this
It is.
more than I like the red trick by a lot.
This is so much more versatile.
Yes.
Like so much more
Like the
versatile.
hexproof, the reach, also the trample, and the
The fact
permanent
that
plus
the
one plus
buff is
one.
permanent with
Yes.
the +1 counter. Yeah. This card is a lot more flexible, and I think it's kind of a toolbox in a single card. You're gonna do something with it, and it's gonna be good enough.
Yeah, I think honestly I'm starting this card at a 6, which is a little bit higher than I gave the fight card, because I think this card
Hmm.
is just gonna be kind of the ubiquitous beat story in the format, that everything was fine and then your opponent had a Gaia's Gift at the wrong time, and then their creature was bigger. Your removal spell didn't go through, or they blocked your flyer, or they got trample and killed you through blocks, or they, indestructible in response to your triple blocks or something. And you're going to be like, oh, the Guy's Gift got me again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and all that on a 2 mana card. The versatility, the power, it's all there. This is a good card. This is
Mm.
People are comparing this to like Heroic Intervention.
Yeah.
Gnarlroot Pallbearer is next. This is a 6 mana 5/5 with trample, and when it enters the battlefield, a creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So
Yes. So
that
this is the
that
green
number
black team. Yeah.
that number is you need to work out what that number is going to be most of the time, and in a lot of games of limited, it's going to be somewhere between 3 and like 7.
Yeah, seven's a really high number.
Yeah.
You might have had 7 creatures die, but if they're all like actual real card creatures, like non-token, I'd be worried.
Yeah, I mean, I think
If you milled some in, yeah, if you're playing like
there's
yeah, if you're
there's
playing
slightly more
Devouring
self
Great
mill
Maw or
than
the Blanchwood.
average, and also
Mm.
well, there's also of course exiling from your own graveyard as well. But I think in a format where there's like some board stalls and some self mill, you'll have a few more creatures than average in your graveyard at the end of some games. And I
Yeah,
think 7
absolutely.
is like on the upper limit of what is like reasonable, if you ask me. I think most of the
Yeah,
time this is going to be like between 3 and 5 ish, and then on the upper end it'll be a little higher. But the thing is, once you get to the point where you're giving something like plus 4 anyway, it's probably going to get chumped or trade for something big. Unless your opponent is at a high enough life total to just take it, which will be the case sometimes. Either it'll be chumped or they'll take it.
yeah, absolutely.
And I don't really think that's good enough for me to really like this card. I think, especially since it's 6 mana, you probably just want to play some of the cards with Prototype.
Yeah, I think if this had like one more ability, like if it had reach or if it had vigilance or something, I would be much more inclined to be
Yeah.
interested in this. But as it is,
It,
you know,
it's
they can
it's
chump the first half. It doesn't have trample. The second half is only a 5/5 for 6, and
it's just
yeah.
competing with too many cards that have better versatility. Like all of the expensive cards, we haven't even gotten to them yet, but like we're talking like 10 mana 10/10s with a second mode that is better than this card.
Mm,
And then you
yeah.
can also just cast it as a 10 mana 10/10 if you have the mana. And that's just one of the cards. There's a lot of them, and most of them are at common. So Gnarlroot Pallbearer is not the best in a line of cards that offer greater versatility than this does. So I'm giving this a 4. You can play it. It will be a 5/5, and that's a sizable creature. But you're never going to be like, wow, really got there with the Gnarlroot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't even say, you know, if you buff it up so that it's got so it tramples over better, but even still, it's like that's not. You don't want to be buffing up a 6 mana creature. You want the 6 mana creature to be standing by itself.
Yeah. I mean, the best case scenario is you like put this on a flyer. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole
In
thing.
that case, in that case, it is legit. Like if you get that damage through, it is legitimately.
Yeah.
But you do have to get it through.
There's also just like easier and cheaper ways to do that. Like,
Yeah.
do I want to like play this on 6 and give something like +4/+4, or do I want to have Gaia's Gift? I probably just want Gaia's Gift as long as my creature count is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Guy's gift and another spell is so much better than.
Hoarding Recluse is next. 4 mana 2/3 reach Death Touch, and it has a die clause that's very interesting. Shuffles something back in from the graveyard, or not shuffles, just puts it on the bottom.
Yeah, it puts it straight on the bottom. Um, I think this card is good enough.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
you really like. Don't underestimate the power of one reach blocker. Like, legitimately, does a lot more than it should.
Yeah. So realistically, I think this will trade with most flyers most of the time.
Yeah, well, it should.
However,
It's got yeah,
yeah, the 3 toughness is like it's fine, but the death touch is what
yeah.
you're
Unless
getting out of
somebody,
this.
yeah, unless someone has a whole bunch of like the white flyers, this card's not going to be, you know, killing multiple creatures.
Yeah.
It might hold multiple creatures back for a while, which is just as useful. But
See, I don't even know if it does that very well. I think if you have anything that can attack into this, you probably just swing it in anyway, because you want to pave the way for your bigger creatures like the big giant mechas, because you'd never want to swing those into this.
yeah,
So this is in
but
an awkward
Magic players are
spot where,
silly. They're
yes,
scared of creatures dying.
like this is in an awkward spot where it holds back some flyers if your opponent won't attack, but your opponent is incentivized to attack, and you're incentivized to not block because this is one of the few things in the format that can always block and kill most of those big giant robots.
Yeah,
However, I think it's still, I don't know. I'm feeling like a 4, bordering on 4.5. I just don't feel good about it.
yeah, that's fair. Um, Yeah, I
I,
again, this is a great target for just about anything to make it bigger so that it doesn't die on one attack.
yeah,
But it's already 4 mana, and that's not wonderful.
yeah. I feel like you could play it, and you probably will, especially with like reach. Flyers are important to be able to block, but at
Yes,
4 mana, eh, it's just okay.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perimeter Patrol's next. 3 mana, 3/3, and whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Three mana, 3/3s are actually not very common in this set at all. I think this might be the only one.
Yeah, this could be it.
Got a lot of 3 mana, 3/2s, and we got a lot of 4 mana,
Yeah,
3/3s.
I. It doesn't because this is 3 toughness rather than 4 toughness.
Yeah,
Its ability is almost irrelevant
yeah,
unless you have one specific card in the set, a mythic. Um, it's I'm just not high on this card. Like even though it's got good stats, dice to removal, my friend, dice to removal.
yeah. I mean, not even like dies to removal, it just dies to combat. Three
Yeah,
toughness is not like the worst, but it's just not that good. Like
yeah. I
this is a
mean,
fine creature.
it blocks and kills their tramply red boy.
Yeah,
But that's about it,
yeah.
really.
This is like just barely above filler. This is like 16th, 17th card. Need something to fill out your curve. It's not bad, but it's not super duper impressive. You probably cut worse cards in this color before you would cut this, but not very many. I want to say this is like a 4.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just fine. If you need a 3, it's there. Next up,
Yeah,
Shoot Down. Sorcery speed, 3 mana, exile target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Well, you get a lot of coverage out of this card.
you do. It kind of just works.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of the decks that aren't going to have artifacts will probably have an enchantment or a creature with flying.
4 mana is not like 4 mana would be an embarrassing amount to pay for this effect. It's an embarrassing amount to pay in most other sets. Here, it's a lot more relevant,
Yeah,
and also, we just had oh, what was it, like Rip Apart or something? It exiles a enchantment or artifact, or it exiles any non-land permanent for 4 mana. That card was legitimately good. This card is worse than that, but not by
Tear
much.
Asunder.
Tear Asunder, thank you. Yeah.
You got there, kinda.
I
Things were being torn, and there were multiple
yeah,
pieces.
I had
That's the
I had
essence
the
of it.
image in my head, not the
Yeah,
not the words.
you had the vision of things being ripped to shreds.
Sadly, yes.
Yes. Just like my hopes of having removal in this set that's really good.
Oh no. Yeah.
I,
I
I think Shoot
I think
Down.
you run it. Yeah.
I think you can probably main deck one of these relatively comfortably. I don't know how many of these I want, especially since they are relatively conditional. I think they're a lot better out of the sideboard. And at 4 mana, I'm not super duper keen on running like 2 or more almost ever. A lot of the flyers actually cost either 4 mana or less, so it's not really the most mana efficient in that regard. Being able to exile the artifacts is nice and all, but I think I'm just happier bringing this out of the sideboard. God forbid you play against like the soldier deck or like mono red or something.
Yeah.
Then this card just does
Sometimes you
nothing
get
slow.
yeah, exactly.
Like, cool, I can wait till turn 4 to blow up their +2/+2 enchantment. Very nice.
Yeah. But if they put it on a creature with flying, you're pretty happy with
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But at that point, there's depending on what other color you're playing, there's probably just better ways to do that. Next up, we have Tawnos' Tinkering. This is a 4 mana instant. Put 2 +1 counters on an artifact, creature, or land. Untap it. If it isn't a creature, it becomes a creature.
I'm
So
not a fan.
I think
Like,
I think what this has
I
going
wouldn't
for
pay.
it
Yeah,
is the untap.
it is the untap. Yeah, you can get a surprise block out of this. Um, yeah, I wouldn't pay that much mana for just the counters. I wouldn't pay that much mana to put it onto to turn land into a creature, unless it like yeah, like if it's not an indestructible land, I'm not happy about it. There are some weird artifacts that you can do to that you can put it on, and it will be genuinely interesting. Um, but
Yeah, there might be some
I
kind
think you
of
need two of these modes to be relevant. I think
yeah.
you need two of these modes to be relevant and not just on the block for creatures.
I agree.
So
I think if you
um,
just pass the turn with this much mana up in most games, your opponent's going to know that something is up. You will be able
yeah,
to
it
ambush
kind of
some number of things, but I just don't. Eh, it's just a lot of mana.
it's a lot of mana. I'm just not a fan. In the end,
Well,
I can't really justify it myself.
so I'm thinking of like a line of play where you're attacking on turn 4 with your random thing, and if your opponent blocks, cool. You're happy, you can use this, blow them out. Your creature's bigger and survives and is untapped. There's dice. And that's like one of the better case scenarios, probably the best, because they probably
Yeah,
tapped out on their turn to play something, and then you got your thing. In that instance, it's not really that much better than just like a random removal spell. And then there's a
exactly.
lot of times where your opponent's just going to say, "Okay, I'll take the damage," and then you're like, "All right, well, do I spend my whole turn doing nothing so I can play this on their turn, which can go wrong, or maybe they just don't attack, or something else, which they very well might not if you just leave 4 mana up." Or do you
Yeah,
play your thing and have this not do anything for a turn? I just feel like this is a little
exactly.
clunky, and for that reason, I want to give it a 4. I think it's a relatively playable trick. It's just very clunky. The replacement level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just rather have Guy's Gift. Maybe that just speaks to how good Guy's Gift is.
I think that card is legitimately good, and I think the card is legitimately bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Tomocool Honor Guard is next. 2 mana, 3/1 with Ward 2. You know,
This card is a lot better than the one with Reach.
yeah. Although, admittedly, as far as abilities to go on a 2 mana 3/1, Ward 2 is not the one I was looking for.
No, if this had Vigilance or something, I'd be a
Yeah.
lot happier about
Yeah.
it. But yeah, I mean, put a counter on this, put an aura on this. It will become a threat, and I mean, at least it's more relevant than Reach.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they were trying to do with this card. I guess you can't ping it for 1 damage with that uncommon, unless you want to pay more
Yeah,
mana for it. That is a very, very narrow ability, though. Eh,
very
I
much
think
so.
it's better than the Rock Hunter, but I don't think this is good. I think this
Yeah,
is
no,
a
this is curve filler. It's
yeah.
not gonna do anything special.
This is really this is like a 4 bordering on slightly less, maybe. It's just playable, I guess. And you're not happy. Wasteful Harvest is next. 3 mana. Mill 5 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the cards milled this way into your hand. So it is almost impossible to miss, but
Yeah, you are going to hit. Um,
like
but is it worth it?
I don't think so. I don't really think
I
I'm that
don't think
happy
so.
with this.
Yeah, like unless you are specifically looking to fill your graveyard with creatures so that you can, bash with the null root, I don't see it working out great.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean they're just in almost every color. Better ways to put things in your graveyard that actually contribute to the board, or ways to sift through your deck that are just
Yeah.
better than this.
I am not happy about going like not getting card advantage for 3 mana.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I could see a world where I'm surprised and this card selection is actually quite nice, but I don't think
I see
I'm
that
living in that
world.
world.
Yeah, I see that world in like if you're. I see that world in constructed basically. Like you can make the dream happen with Wasteful Harvest. I just don't think you can randomly put it together in draft.
Yeah, I agree. With that in mind, I want to give this a 3. Just probably shouldn't play it. I guess you could play it and it won't be the worst,
Yeah.
but it's just wheel spinning. Not even good wheel spinning. It's just aggressively average. Now we have uncommons in green. And some of these are pretty nice if memory serves. Alloy Animist is first. I don't remember this one at all, actually. 3 mana as for an activated ability. Until end of turn, target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4. Sorry, I had something drop over here.
That's
Um,
right.
you know,
Yes.
I actually think this is good.
I think this is all right. Like this is a way to turn, excess power stones into a relevant
Yeah,
like 3 mana. It's a relevant ability.
yeah. I mean,
Having a one toughness, a one power block, like having a 1/1 for one isn't terrible in this set as long as it has the useful ability, because there are so many one toughness things that you can trade it off with.
did you play
The
any?
fact that this isn't sorcery speed, like the fact that you can
Yes.
ambush, like, quote unquote, ambush something and hold up mana, is also useful.
Did you play any of oh God, Kaldheim?
A little bit, not too much.
Do you remember the green
Oh, the
or was it
blue,
blue? Yeah, the
yes,
blue, and it could
yeah, the
turn like
blue one.
snowlands into 4/4s.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good card, and I think this one is going to play out very
Yeah.
similarly.
So it's basically the same. Like you have to pay 3 to do this, and it is slightly more restrictive in that you need non-creature artifacts and not just snowlands. But
Yes.
So when you think about it, you're paying 2 and you're using the land that you're animating, so it kind of costs 3 anyway for that card. So I think this is very
Yeah.
similar to that, and for that reason, I think this is actually quite good. I want to give this a 6.5. It requires like a good amount of setup, but there's going to be games where you're just animating like 2 things a turn, and your opponent hasn't gotten to their big dumb idiots yet, and they're like, okay, well, I could trade my real creature for a power stone, or I can take 4 damage. That's just a tough decision to make.
Yeah, 4 damage is a real clock.
Yeah,
It really is.
you take 5 of those and you're dead. It's gone.
Hmm.
And there's not a lot of stuff in this set that gains you life, so that life is going to go pretty quick, and there's not a lot of ways to get it back. I like this card a lot. Next up, we have Audacity. Oh, uh-oh. We have been disconnected. I'm going to have to give this a pause while we get back online. Alright, we had a little bit of a DC, but we're back. Like I was saying, Elo Animist. I think it's really good. Can't wait to die to it. Next up, we have Audacity. And this is a nod to Rancor. Although it is worse than Rancor, I think this is still good.
Yeah, so you can think of Rancor as this card, but it always draws Audacity,
Yes.
right? So it's just an Audacity that keeps drawing itself. I think this is a legitimately good card. Rancor
Yes.
is a powerhouse for a reason, even if you don't get the third card off of it. I think it's still very good.
Yeah, I'm like the opportunity cost is quite low, and you don't really have to put this on anything super duper crazy. You can hook it up to almost anything, and it's going to turn your creature into something that beats a lot harder. Even if you just put it
Yes.
on like your random 2/2 and attack into their 2/2 and it trades and you get 2 damage in, you're at least getting your card back. Like it's pretty easy to sneak an Audacity in, and once you do, it's pretty easy to get the card back from it because that creature will eventually find a way into the graveyard. And the removal in this set is usually quite slow and clunky, so you don't really have to worry about this getting blown out by instant speed removal. For that
Absolutely,
reason, I
yeah.
want to give this card a 5.5, bordering on
Yeah.
6, because you do need a specific kind of deck to like maximize the effects. It's just never going to be like an awful card.
Yeah, this is not a first pick for me, but
I agree.
I am never sad picking it. Like,
Yeah. This,
if the rest of the pack is terrible, I will legitimately pick this first
yeah.
and not be sad about it.
Yeah, just hook it up to like any random thing, and I mean, if they can block, good. If they can't block, oh, they're in some trouble.
Yeah, and just giving some random creatures, giving some random aggressively static creatures trample. Heck yeah, I'll
Like,
get some bonus damage in, get my card back.
do you remember that uncommon 2/2 with menace in red?
Yeah, that'd
It's
be
2 mana 2/2 with
very nice.
menace. Now it's a 4 2 with menace and trample, and when it dies, you draw a card. Okay, cool.
Ooh,
I accept.
beautiful.
Blanchwood
Yeah,
Armor's next. 3 mana, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each forest you control.
I mean, this is legitimately very good. This is a very powerful card because I mean, you do have to, as with all of these cards, we've said it every single time so far. But if you are in mono green, 3 mana +3/+3 on an aura, it's okay. 3 mana +4/+4, that's pretty good. Granted, there aren't too many trample creatures. If you can, strap it to something and then give it trample with audacity, say, or Nalroot Pallbearer, or something like that, um, it gets a lot better. Otherwise, it's just really strong. It's a really strong card in mono green.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this card is obviously quite good in mono green, especially with how clunky the removal is inside the set. There are just not a
Yes,
whole lot of things that are going to deal with a creature that has grown out of hand with Blanchwood Armor.
exactly. Yeah.
There's a reason that green is not in the bottom 2 colors. Green is
I
in
would. I would.
green is above 2 colors specifically.
Interesting. Yes.
Yes.
They'll have to read the article for it, of course.
Well, I'll
I'm not
spoil a
going to
little bit of
spill.
it. We'll spoil a
We'll
little bit
spill
of it
some of
at
the
the end, I
secrets. We'll
promise.
spill some of the secrets. Yes.
Yeah. So if you're mono green, I'm content to put Blanchwood Armor at a 6.5 to 7. If
Yeah.
it is literally the first pick of the draft, you probably should not take Blanchwood Armor. You probably will not end up mono green. But if it's pack 2 and you have like 75% of your cards are green and those are the good ones, take Blanchwood Armor,
Yeah.
try and force it. Make sure you have the appropriate creature count and run over your opponent with this.
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't take this first pick, but what if you
Yeah.
do, and then you pick it the next pack as well? What if you pick 4 of these cards? Like
If you pick
most
4 of
cards you
these
don't want
cards,
4 copies of. Yeah, most cards you don't want 4 copies of. Like you usually want like varied effects so that no one thing is just going to completely ruin your game. I want 4 Blanchwood armors.
if you
That's my kind of draft
if you
here.
somehow end up with 4 of these, you just cram like every single 2 that you can possibly pick up, and the ones as well, and you just go to town
Mm,
and
absolutely.
try to get some of that combat trick to save your creatures too.
Yeah.
Card's good. Bushwhack is next.
Card's good.
Single mana, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, or fight.
Um,
So the
it.
biggest problem I have with this card is that there are so many mediocre creatures in this set that are kind of all like
Yeah.
around the same size. That fight is just a lot worse than it would usually be. I think this card is actually about at the
I
same
don't think
level
this.
as the common, if not maybe a little bit worse.
Yeah, the only place that I see this card really fitting in is again like Sigil Stalwart. If you're splashing colors, searching for a basic land, like searching for your off color, could legitimately be useful. but otherwise it's just not going to be great. Like one mana fight is good at instant speed.
Yeah.
At sorcery speed, it's pretty mediocre.
Well, I mean, usually it would be actually a lot better than mediocre, but in this set specifically, because of the context of how bad the creatures mostly are, it definitely gets a lot worse. You'll probably still play
Yeah.
it, and you can set up situations where it's solid. Like, there's definitely, like, utility creatures and stuff that you'll be able to destroy, but you have to wait a while for this card to be just become one mana, kill a creature that you don't like. And there's going to be a lot of times where you look at the board and it is a 2-for-1 in favor of your opponent. Now, if it was
Yeah,
search for a land
exactly.
and fight, then I would feel a lot better about it. I think it would be easily one of the best removal spells in the set. But if it's not a bite, it's a fight, and it's much, much worse.
Yeah.
Now, and for that reason, I'm going to give it a 4.5, slightly above filler level for me. Just because it
Okay.
can be
Yeah.
removal, just not very good at all.
Exactly.
Very mediocre
Yes.
removal. Fallaci Excavation is next. 3 Power Stone tokens gain 3 life. Um, I don't like this.
I don't see it. Like green itself does not have many ways of making out of the Power Stone tokens, which makes sense. So I guess Alloy Animist is a lot worse in mono green. This is a way to make them, but it's not a
Yeah,
good way.
I just
Yeah,
want
it's
my
not a good
5 mana
way.
spells to do more than this, and gaining 3 life is a kind of pitiful consolation prize.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
This reminds me a lot of there's a Cardinal Drain. They made three little pigs, and when each of the pigs died, they made a food token. Um, that card was okay because it was instant speed and you can make blockers. This card is sorcery speed and does not make blockers.
yeah,
Um,
like even if the Power Stones came in untapped, so that you got like an instantaneous rebate, I don't. I still think this card would just be. It just doesn't do anything. It's like you already have 5 mana. If you're doing anything with your like time, like you're probably gonna find a way to get other Power Stones anyway. I just don't think this is doing
mm,
anything for you that you can't already do better. Like, am I crazy to think that I just want like the 3 mana 3/2 that just makes a Power Stone over this?
you're not crazy at all. No,
Yeah,
that card is so much better than this.
just play that. It comes with a creature. You still get a Power Stone if that's what you want, and it will prevent you from taking 3 damage, which this card does.
Yeah.
But you can't attack with it, and this card's just bad. This card's bad. Don't play it. This is
Yeah.
like
This card is just unless you really, really, really need power stones and are, filled to the brim with everything else, this card is just so bad.
so.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't think about, but now that you think about it, still isn't that good, is that there are a few things that say like whenever an artifact enters a battlefield under your control. However, most of
Yes.
those are just like the ones at common aren't very good, and then the ones at uncommon, I still don't want to use this to enable it. I still just want to
Yeah,
play the
there's
better cards.
exactly. I mean, perimeter patrol, that three
Yeah.
mana 3/3, it goes to a 6/3. That is a scary body.
And it
But you
still
just cast
dies
a
to the
5 mana
same
spell
exact
to gain three
things.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I would much rather just cast a 5 mana 4/4.
Yeah.
Like,
There's just
just
better
give me a
stuff to do.
bad vanilla creature and I will cast it over this spell almost all the time.
Speaking of 5 mana things with 4 power, Gaia's Courser is next, and spoiler alert, this card is good.
Yes, yes, it is.
You should play this over Philology Excavation because this is good.
Every time. Every time. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, by 5 mana, I would expect that there are three or more creature cards in your graveyard. Like,
well, you can do it by 5, but there will be 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard eventually in limited anyway because that's just how limited goes. You don't have to turn it on
yeah.
immediately, but once you do turn it on, you can just cash it in for a card even if it's going to die. If you want to. And there's going to be a solid number of board states where you're going to attack and you won't have to have it die. You can use a combat trick, or maybe they just can't block it effectively. This card is pretty easy to turn into a 2-for-1 or better.
Yeah, very easy to turn into a 2-for-1
Yeah.
and a relevant body.
Yes, extremely relevant body. 5 toughness
Yeah,
is a lot of toughness. 4 power is
a
a
lot of
lot of
toughness.
power, and it's
It's going to kill most things.
yeah, it's very very easy to cast. The mana in this set is not good, so having something that's single green mana is actually pretty nice because there will be games where you only have one forest, which is another hit against Philology Excavation, which I don't know how they could. They'd have to make it like quintuple green to make it worse at this point. Uh,
That would be a worse card.
Gaia's Courser, I'm comfortable giving a 6, maybe even a 6.5. This card is just very good.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm
100%.
first picking it, but like based on some of the packs, like some of the cards I've seen otherwise, and even some of the uncommons, there are packs where I first pick this. Definitely. Just not all of them.
Absolutely.
Obstinate Baloth is next. 4 mana 4/4 gains 4 life, and it also has a random discard clause that will almost never come up.
Yeah. This is the one good life gain card in the set because it also just has a decent body.
Yeah.
Like a 4 mana 4/4 is nothing to scoff at.
So,
Do you know the reason why this card is in the set though? It's
uh,
a very
uh,
important reason.
downshift to uncommon.
Ah, no, they
Oh
just
yeah,
printed
they've printed
Liliana as the
Lily. Yeah,
veil.
yeah, yeah. Of
They
course.
just,
Yeah,
you know, the best card to discard off of when your opponent activates the
yeah. I
veil.
mean,
It's
used
Obstinate
it
Bailout.
used to be Loxodon Smiter for Thoughtseize, and now it's
Hmm.
Obstinate Baloth for Lily.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes.
That's exactly why this card's here, and for fine card, you'll win games with it, but it's not here for limited,
Yeah.
even though it's good.
I think you'll definitely be like happy with this card. 4/4's a solid sized body, and it tussles with a lot of things. Most of the things that cost 4 mana will have like 4 or 3 toughness, and usually not 4 power. So this card is
Mm,
quite
yeah,
strong in that regard. I'm comfortable giving it a 5, just because it's never
yes,
going to outperform what it says on the face. It doesn't have any kind of other late game applications. It's just an above par on its face creature.
yeah, absolutely. It's just good.
Here is a really interesting one. Sarenth Steelseeker, 2 mana 1/2, and whenever you get an artifact, you look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you may put it into your hand after you reveal it. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. Hmm.
So yeah, so you can still put lands into the graveyard if for
Yes.
some reason you don't want them in your
So you
hand.
can always
I
put
don't
the card into the graveyard, but if it's a land, you may put it into your hand.
basically,
Yes.
yeah. And yeah,
So
and you must put it into the graveyard. If you look at it and good, sorry, you can't keep it on top. It has to go into the graveyard here. Oh, you may put it into graveyard. Jokes. Just ignore all of that. I just can't read. Um, it's it's a fine card. It's behind
yeah.
on stats, and it's asking you to do something that's relatively difficult in just green. So you really need to pair this with another color that's making a lot of tokens, making a lot of Power Stone artifacts, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it occupies a very unique spot where it's not really doing anything for like the creature strategy of like actually attacking and blocking anything but the most meek of creatures. But it also
Yeah,
asks you to have this sit around until a stage of the game where you're going to be putting lands into your graveyard.
yeah, absolutely.
However, in the early game, there are ways to just like have this either draw you lands that you need or get things out of the way. I like it, but I don't know how good it is. I want to say that I'm going to start it above replacement levels, so like a 5, but maybe it is just a little awkward. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a little awkward, but hopefully it works.
Yeah. Well, that's it for green. Moving us over to colorless, and whoops, I'm just dropping things all over. So the artifacts with prototype are interesting. Most of the prototype costs, in fact, maybe all of them, have colored mana.
Yes, as far as I know, it's all colored.
However,
Well, all of them are colored. They're not all colored mana. Yeah.
they are still artifacts, and you can pay the colorless part of those prototype costs with power stones.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So these cards, not all of them are cards that you should only be playing in the color that the prototype cost is. And there are some that you should only be playing in the color that the prototype cost is. It's kind of like a case by case basis sort of thing.
Yeah. So you can run any of these in any deck because they all have a they all have a colorless mode, but some of them are a lot easier to cast than others. Like I'm looking at the green ones right now, and there's a couple 7 mana ones here. There's the 10 mana one.
Yeah.
It just you know if you're not willing to cast it at a cheaper rate, and you're not like you don't have some sort of crazy turbo plan to get out a whole bunch of Power Stone tokens, I feel like you at least need to be able to splash to cast these cards.
Yeah, some of them. We'll go through them one by one. We'll start out with
Yeah.
Aeronaut's Wings. 2 mana equipment, +1/+0 and flying, equip 2. Honestly, I like +1/+0 flying.
Yes.
I think in this set more
Yeah.
than a lot of other ones, the removal's kind of clunky. There's not that many ways to interact with flying creatures. Like you put this on a 3/2, and there aren't that many creatures that are going to block it.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah, and the removal is such that there's a good number of enchantments and a good number of conditional-ish removal spells, and then you can just equip this to something else and start cracking it in the sky again.
Yeah, absolutely. It just does it all, really.
Yeah, for that reason, I want to start this off at a 5 above filler. I think this is a card that a lot of decks will want to try and close out games that would otherwise devolve into like a bunch of creatures being on board while people are trying to cast their big things.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Blitz Automaton, which is a 7 mana 6/4 with haste, or a 3/2 with haste for 3 mana. And honestly, I don't really like either side of this card.
This is the hard part, yeah.
Yeah.
There's 3/2. I mean, a 3/2 for 3 with haste isn't
It isn't
terrible.
bad, but
Like,
like, but like,
it's gonna get in some damage. And
it's only good in one deck. It's only good in one specific deck, and it's like the super duper hyper aggro beatdown.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's just gonna trade for like basically every single creature in the format, and then by the
Mm,
time you pay 7 mana for it, it's better. But like, there are creatures that cost 4 mana that this will trade for, both
yeah,
at
there are.
common and uncommon.
Absolutely.
I just
Yeah.
feel like you can do better than this card. If you're
Yes.
in red, you can play creatures that are probably higher quality. I don't know.
I'd hope so.
I would really hope
I
so.
would hope
I
so.
just don't like this. I'm putting this at 4. This is our placement level card for sure, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And if you are going to play it, you probably should not be playing it outside of red at all.
Hmm. Yeah.
Next up is Boulder Branch Golem. 7 mana 6/5. And you gain life equal to its power when it enters the battlefield, or it can be a 4 mana 3/3. I
I'm not a
mean,
big fan of this one.
I like that it at least has the prototype mode to it. So if you really just need a body and a little bit of life cushion, it gives you that.
Yeah.
And honestly,
It's yeah.
I think this is actually not that bad. I think this is actually a good bit more playable than Blitz Automaton. I would play this a lot more often than I play Blitz Automaton.
I mean, it certainly lines up favorably against one another. Um, but yeah, I mean, my only problem with it is I wouldn't want to cast the green side. It is very splashable though, so it's the sort of thing of if you are going for a green splash, I see this card getting a lot better as it is.
Yeah,
But yeah, no,
I mean,
perfectly fine card.
honestly, I think that in decks that aren't green, there's still going to be decks that play this, even if they can't pay
Yeah.
the green cost. Just because, like, do you remember like Honey Mammoth?
Oh yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
this is just another Honey Mammoth that
Effectively,
you
yeah,
don't have to play in green. And with like Power Stones and stuff, it feels like a lot more decks are going to have access to cards that are this expensive. So really, this is like a card almost every deck can play if they want to like have a big creature that stabilizes the board. That green also unlocks a second mode on if they're facing so much aggression that they just need a body and to cushion their life total. And if you add those things together, I think this becomes like a 4.5 to almost a 5.
Hmm.
Like if I consider Blitz Automaton a 4, like super duper replacement level, I kind of have to give this a 4.5 to a 5.
yeah. That's very fair. That's very fair. Yeah,
Next up is Clay Revenant. 1 mana, 1 2 enters tapped, and you can pay 2 and a black and return it from your graveyard to your hand. You gotta pay a
yeah,
lot of mana to spin those wheels.
yeah.
um,
This is a problem.
so, I mean, we all get what it's telling you to do with this. You need to sacrifice it, chump block with it. It's a lot of
Yeah,
mana, but most of that mana can be done with Power Stones. Everything except the
yeah,
single black mana to return it. So, do I think this will have a place? Yes. I think not in most decks. I think this will be just okay in most decks. You should not be
yeah.
playing it if you can't pay the black cost. You just
Exactly.
should not be playing it if you
Yeah.
can't. And if you
Like
don't have
I,
some
I
kind of
just
sacrifice synergy, you probably shouldn't be playing it either.
yeah. If this didn't if this went straight to the battlefield, when you acted the ability, or it didn't enter tapped, or it cost one less to activate the
Oh yeah,
ability,
they're much
I
better.
could see this card being actually playable.
Yeah,
As it is, I can't see it. Yeah, unless you're doing a lot of sacrificing, a lot of value, it's just
yeah. You
not
need to
gonna
be
be worth
like
it.
doing like repeated activated abilities to sacrifice things for very very potent benefits almost every turn for this card to pull its weight. And I think then you're still paying a lot of mana and doing a lot of work for it. I just don't
Yes.
think this is good. I think in a deck where you're not doing those things, this card is just a little below replacement level, like a 3.5 for me. Next up is Coastal
Yeah.
Bulwark, a 2 mana 1 3 with Defender that gets +2/+0 as long as you control an island, and you could pay 2 and tap it to Surveil 1.
Um. I. I mean, okay. So this really. I mean, it obviously gets a lot better if you control an island.
Really?
Wow, who would have guessed? But I do see this having value in a lot of other colors, namely green and black, who care a lot more about having creatures in the graveyard. The fact that you can keep this back, and at the end of their turn, threat of activation, you can hold up, some spell that lets you, some interaction spell, and if it doesn't happen, whatever, you get a little bit of card selection, see what your next draw is. If you like it, you take it. Otherwise, you don't.
Yeah, I think this card's good.
I think this card's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're playing blue, 3/3 defenders are very good. In this set, that is going to trade for a lot of things, but like that's fine because in the late game, this also does something very powerful. Surveil 1 is actually really good. It's better than
Yeah.
Scry by
Yes,
a lot.
100%. Yeah.
Like a
I'm
lot, a
so glad.
lot.
I'm so glad that they are reprinting well, not reprinting, but they're putting Surveil on more things.
I agree.
I'm a personal believer that Surveil is a better mechanic in almost every way than
Yeah.
Scry, and I'm glad to see it. Glad to see it on more.
I'm just glad that my Dimir Spybug can have more things to turn it on because I like that card.
Yeah,
Even in decks that can't have islands in play, I think that's perfectly serviceable. It's obviously like much worse, but 1/3s are not the most meager creatures. It just becomes a kind of benign one. I would consider it like a worse Urza at that point. Instead of looting, you're surveilling. You have to pay two to
yeah,
do it. It's a defender. It does a lot less
yeah.
work,
No,
but I
this
think
card
it's still
is
fine.
this card's yeah, exactly. This card isn't doing anything new, and it's not doing anything better than your colored cards are going to be
Yeah.
doing it. Honestly, but it does the job. And if you need an open pick that's going to fit into a lot of different styles of decks, this might be the card that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, with that in mind, in non-blue decks, I think I'm comfortable giving this like a 4 to a 4.5, and in blue decks, I think you're going to be very happy with this card, and it's going to play more like a five and a
Uh,
half.
yeah, I think I'm at a 5 for it on blue, black, and green decks.
Mm,
Red and white, I think I'm more like 4 for
yeah.
those two.
Combat Courier's next. 1 mana, 1/1, and you could sacrifice it for 2 mana to draw a card, and then you can unearth it for blue. Well,
So it's 3 mana. So it's
so
3 mana
for the round
for
trip, you're
one
paying
card.
6 mana for a divination for the round trip.
Yeah. Yes. It's not great.
I think what they
um,
should have done is make this when it dies, draw a card.
that would be good, and I think it would. Yeah. So I mean, notably, this does sacrifice itself. So
Yeah,
you can play this in red black and get a trigger off of something when you sacrifice it.
yeah.
If you're splashy blue, you can unearth it, then do it again. But yeah, I can I can sympathize as to why it's not. I can sympathize as to why it has all the restrictions it has. It just makes for an unfortunate card.
So I think there will be random decks that play this card just to have like an artifact enter the battlefield trigger that they can sacrifice to draw a card, even if they can't use the unearth. But I think that's not still not really that good. I think that'll still have this card play like a 4 in those decks in those situations. And like even if you're playing blue, I don't think this card really goes past 4. This card is just
Yeah,
not that good. It just doesn't really do enough.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Death Charge Colossus is our next one, and this is also partially blue. We have a 9 mana 9/9 that does not untap, but you could pay 3 to untap it, or a 6 mana 6/6. And
It's good stats. It's great stats.
yeah, those are both serviceable. I think the downside sucks. I'm not very happy about that. But
Yeah,
it is not that big of a downside. Like especially once you get 9 mana, like you could pay the 3 mana. It'll be all right.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you're not going to be casting another 9 mana spell up.
Yeah,
Like, you're only going to have so many of these in your deck.
yeah. I kind of like it. I think it would be borderline awful if it came in tapped, but I think it's
Oh, yeah,
actually
no,
quite
this card would
fine.
be. I think this card will serve its role.
Yeah,
If you just need a big fatty, you'll get a big fatty.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I like this card more than I like Blitz Automaton. Even though it is a lot more expensive on the prototype side, I still think I like this card more. And I think I'm going to put it like 4, bordering on 4.5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Dredging Claw is next. 2 mana equipment. Equip with one and a black, and equipped creatures +1/+1 has menace, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield from your graveyard, you may attach this to it. So that would be, I think, the only ways in this set to do that are uh, Unearth and a couple of cards that return things to the battlefield from the graveyard.
Yes, there are
Yeah,
some
there's like,
white cards that do
yeah,
that.
just a couple
So
things. Not a
yeah,
lot. Mostly
not
Unearth is what we're talking about here.
exactly. That's what it's all about here.
And to be honest, giving something that just came back from your graveyard +1/+0 and menace in addition to its haste is actually not
Oh,
bad.
absolutely.
That's like
Yeah,
that's what you want to do is make the thing a little more difficult to block.
yeah, absolutely.
However,
You're looking to get more value out of, like, you're getting a second card basically, and you're just looking to get as much value out of it as possible.
the front face of it is +1/+0 and menace on an equipment for one and a black as the equip. And to be honest, I don't know how much I value +1/+0 and menace on an equipment. Um,
Menace is worth a lot, but I want to be attaching my equipment to like a 4 mana creature.
yeah, but that's the thing. Once you put it on a 4 mana creature, some of those are going to necessitate double blocks anyway.
Mm,
I don't know. Maybe this does create a situation where average creatures need to be blocked by two things, and since the creatures are kind of all sort of smallish and meek, it will demand 2-for-1s for your average
yes.
creatures. But also, it takes a lot of time. Maybe you do have enough time. I'm inclined to start this at above replacement level, around like 4.5, and then give it an opportunity to either impress me or fall flat. Which I think it
Yeah,
very well may do either one. I don't know which one it will do.
could definitely be.
Energy Refractor is next, and this is the actual way that you splash. Not only is this
Yeah.
an artifact, but it draws you a card, which I think is better than the Sentinel Stalwart by like a lot.
Mm.
I like this card a lot more than that one. I don't even know if I like it, but I do like it more than that. And you can pay 2 mana and add 1 mana of any color. So the fact that it replaces itself, I think that's really where the meat of this card is. If it just,
Yeah.
exchanged mana around, that'd be one thing. Notably, you can also
The
pay 2 mana from Power Stones to just get regular mana.
exactly. That's my thinking on this. It helps you, yeah, it helps you turn your art, like your Power Stone mana, into real mana.
Yeah,
Lets you cast some good spells.
yeah. With the mana situation that it is in the set, I don't really think that you're going to play like 3 of these and like 2 basics and be happy with your land. But there are going to be situations where you have like a bomb rare in a color that you usually wouldn't have access to, and you're going to play like 2 of these and maybe like a land or two and some kind of other way to get that color. And then you'll be like, all right, I'm okay.
Yeah,
It's not going to be that
exactly.
great,
Yeah,
but I, otherwise, this card's applications, they're not really that big.
yeah.
If you're
I'm
color screwed,
I'm
this
a
will help.
yeah. I'm a fan of having like three three ways of getting a color if I'm splashing 1 or 2 pips. And energy refractor is definitely, I would definitely be counting it as one of those ways to splash.
Yeah, because like nobody's blowing this up. You already got a card out of it. If they blow it up, they are going to feel bad. So if you land this, it's probably sticking around for the whole game.
Yeah,
And notably, it is a 2 mana artifact that draws a card. So if you want to sacrifice the artifact, well, you already got your money.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
this is a valuable card,
this is like
a deceivable valuable card.
this is like a baseline 4, and if you have things that actually matter, it's gonna go up. I don't think I would probably play it unless I had something I was gonna do with it, but like you can play it. It's like 2 mana draw a card in any color. It's not the worst card you could play. I mean, there are creatures I would not play over that. Next
Yeah.
up, we have Goblin Firebomb. single mana for a flash artifact with 7 mana tap and sacrifice to destroy target permanent.
Yeah, so this
What
card
does it say?
exists.
What does it say that this is actually one of the least restrictive removal spells in the set?
I look, I if you're playing this card, you're desperate, but you need it. I really hope you don't
So
play this card.
the thing that this reminds me of is Blood Tallow Candle.
Yes,
And you
and
know
that
what?
card is also embarrassing.
But people played it a lot.
I didn't. I'm glad I didn't, but
It got
maybe I
played
should have.
often, and historic spells mattered in that set, and it was one. Artifacts
That is
matter in this
true.
set, and this is one. That
Yes.
also had flash, and so does this. Didn't it have
Yeah,
flash, or did it?
I don't think I had
Oh
flash.
well, I know there was like some kind of artifact that had flash like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I
Um,
honestly I think you can do slightly worse than this, and it is a very clunky, slow removal spell, but it does just straight up destroy target permanent. So whatever your opponent has that you don't like, this is a way to get rid of it. And if the thing that you're dealing with is some big giant mecha, well, that probably cost about 7 anyway.
yeah, go Ethanol. Pretty good.
Yeah. I would say this starts out around like a 4.5 with if you have easy ways to get power stones into play and make that cost a little more manageable, can pop up a little bit, but I'm never going to be like, wow, I really really need a goblin firebomb unless I am in a very bad place.
Yeah, exactly. If you need this card, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah. Goring Warplow is next. This is a 6 mana 5/4 with Death Touch, or a 2 mana 1/1 with Death Touch.
I like this a lot. I like. Okay, I think one ones with death touch are criminally underrated. Um, and I feel like the ability for you to level them up if you draw them late game into a big 5/4 creature, I think it's pretty all right.
Yeah, I like it. Honestly, the funny thing about this one is that like the prototype face of it is what's doing the heavy lifting, and the other side of it is kind of the consolation prize, because the 1/1 with Death Touch is usually going to be a lot more relevant than having a random 5/4 body for an expensive cost.
Yeah,
If you ask me, anyway.
yeah,
Because there will be situations where you have a clunky artifact like this sitting in your hand and your opponent has things that matter. And the 1/1 Death Touch in this set is actually pretty good. It trades with, well, most things. That's what Death Touch
yep,
does. And for that reason, I'm going to start this card at a 5. And, I'm not expecting the 5/4 Death Touch to really do a whole lot, but it's nice that I can do it.
yeah,
And
definitely.
that's why it's getting a 5. It has the versatility.
Exactly. If it was just one in a black for a 1/1 death touch, I'd play them. I wouldn't be super happy about it, but the fact that it can be that, or it can be a big like actual clock in the late game, I think this card's pretty good,
Yeah. Mind
pretty
Worker is
decent.
next. 2 mana, 2/1, and you could tap it to gain 1 life. If you've assembled Tron, so to speak,
Yes,
uh,
yes,
and by which I mean gotten the Power Plant Worker and the Tower Worker also into play, you can gain 3 life instead.
yes. Do we want to do all the workers together so that we can?
Yes, I will be scrolling through so I can look at
Yeah,
them. Um,
yeah, that's all right.
I don't like this
Sounds good.
card.
This is not
This
good.
card doesn't
I
do
think you play
anything.
this one. Yeah, you play this one to turn on the other ones.
Yeah, if you want to turn
Um,
on the other ones.
if you want to turn on the other
Yeah,
ones, this is sadly the price you have to pay. Um, it's a 2 mana 2/1. It's not the worst thing in the world,
yeah.
but like,
Every single
come
color just has
on,
cards
there are
that are
better
better.
cards. There are
Every single
so many
color.
better cards in this set.
Uh, Power Plant Workers next. 5 mana 4/4, and you could pay 3 mana to give a +2/+2 until end of turn. And if you've assembled Tron, you can put 2/1/1 counters on it instead and activate this only once each turn.
Yeah. So this is only once each turn, but it's not only as a sorcery. So you can do this on your turn and your opponent's turn.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, the
This
cost of
is
doing all that together is
yeah.
you need a lot of things to go right. So
You do.
on its baseline, I think I'm content giving the Mine Worker a 3. Just
Uh-huh.
play any of the better cards. A Vanilla Tutu
Yeah.
is probably just a little bit better. It can at least hold back 1/1s, and this can't. Power Plant Worker by itself is honestly not that bad. +2/+2 until end of turn is a relatively healthy ability on a 4/4 in this set because a 6/6 is kind of difficult to tussle with unless you're playing one of the big artifacts. Unfortunately, this does cost 5 mana. But even so, the threat of
Yeah.
activation is there, and 6/6s do matter, and the ability is
They
colorless.
do.
So I think this is like a 4 to me. Replacement level
Yeah.
card.
This one's a lot more playable than the Mind Worker.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you have everything together, plus 2+1/+1 counters, big game.
That
That's pretty
legitimately it
good.
stacks up
Yeah.
quickly. That will stack up very quickly.
But unfortunately, you do have to assemble all three, and the last one is Tower Worker, which is 3 mana for a 1/3 with reach, and it can tap to add colorless mana. If you have Tron, you can tap it to add 3 colorless mana instead. So
Yeah. So
it's not easy to get all three of these things on the battlefield at the same time.
no.
So realistically, you should probably be evaluating all of these as single cards on the battlefield by themselves.
Yeah.
And as it stands, I don't really think I want a 3 mana 1/3 with reach that can tap for 1 mana most decks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
Yeah.
this is a 1/3 with reach isn't going to be doing much here. Like, so you really want it for the mana ability,
And the mana
which I
ability is not
guess,
good.
like, if you've assembled Tron, you can use it to pay for the power plant worker on your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, if you
yeah,
get all of
not
this
not
stuff together, if you've assembled all of the average to mediocre cards to create slightly better cards, I still don't really know if Tower Worker's honestly that much better, because you can just turn your whole game plan into throwing counters onto that creature, and you probably don't even need to tap the Tower Worker for mana anyway.
yeah.
And plus, the body of Tower Worker is barely doing anything. Like, you remember the green 3/2 that makes a Power Stone? That's
Yes.
just a lot,
Yeah.
much better than this.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Like,
These so yeah. So evaluating these three as a package in a way, I don't think it's coming together in draft. Like you might
no,
have the
it's not.
perfect draft where you pick, you have to pick a couple at the end of pack one, and then pack two, you see a lot of them coming round again, so you pick up some more, and then pack three, you just get the perfect pack, and you end up with like 7 or 8 of these overall, just like between the
Look,
three of them, 7 or 8. But
let's be honest about
yeah,
what's going to happen. They're going to destroy your power plant worker, and that's going to be it. They're going to put an enchantment on it. They're going to do something
yeah.
to it. It's not going to. They're going to get rid of your power plant worker, and you're going to go, oh, now I have all these cards. Don't do anything. And power
Much
plant
as with
worker
the actual
is the
Tron,
only
that's the one you want to
payoff.
get. Yeah.
And the power plant worker is the only payoff. Like, what are you going to do? Like, gain 3
Yeah.
life a turn? Oh wow, wow! You've really broken the format now.
It's going to be a lot of fun playing Pauper and playing out the Tron lands and then playing out the Tron creatures. That will be fun.
I hope
But
so.
I think that's their
I hope
I
so.
think that's their purpose here.
Because that will be the most fun you have with these cards.
Yeah,
I guarantee
exactly.
it. Next up, we have Mishra's Juggernaut. 5 mana 5/3 with Trample, and it attacks each turn of Fable. Unearth for 5 and a red.
It's not amazing.
Yeah, I don't really like
Original
this very
Juggernaut is a
much.
4 mana 5/3.
Yeah,
So original Juggernaut is this, but it costs 4 mana. It doesn't have the unearth ability. And that card's not incredible.
no, it's usually quite bad. And I don't think this card
It
is
just
much better.
attacks in and dies.
Yeah. Like,
And
this will
that's
push a little bit of damage through, but having to attack each turn of Fable is an incredibly bad ability in a format full of, like, overcosted 3/2s and 3/3s
yeah.
that all somehow still cost less than 5 mana.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
So,
then you can activate the unearth ability, I suppose. But
and do it
yeah,
again.
no, I just don't quite see it. I don't
Or your
quite see
opponent
it.
just takes 5, which is gonna be likely some amount of the time. Like, that's the thing about, like, Unearth. There are going to be times when the Unearth ability is really, really good, and your opponent can't take the damage and they have to chump. And I think that's, like, the only thing this card has going for it. As such,
Yeah.
I'm comfortable giving this a 4, just because otherwise, if it didn't have Unearth, I'd probably make it a 3. With Unearth, I'm going to put it at just replacement level.
Yeah.
It is an artifact. It is. It has some power, and you can unearth it. And I'm not even happy about it. Rust Goliath is
Yeah.
next. 10 mana 10/10 with Reach and Trample. Prototype 5 mana, 2 of which is green for a 3/5.
So this is the big boy.
Yes.
This is the big boy. And it's got trample, which is a very relevant ability.
So,
Green does not make many power tokens by itself, which is the main way to ramp the town.
yeah. However,
Um,
most colors do have a few different ways to play them.
yeah,
And if you're playing green, which, if you ask me, spoiler alert, I think you should probably only be playing this if you can play the secondary cost. Um, Otherwise, it's just going to get stuck in your hand way too often.
absolutely. Yeah, I look. If I'm casting a 10 mana spell in a game, I better be. So I can't expect. I can't expect to be casting a 10 mana spell every game
Yeah,
because that would be very silly.
yeah. There's going to be a lot of games where you just draw this and you're still like 2 or 3 mana off, and you're like, oh, well, I got like 6 lands and 2 Power Stones in play, and well, I could wait like 2 turns, maybe get this on board, or I could just play it now. And that's going to happen a whole lot more often than you might think. It's going to be pretty
Yeah,
uncommon that you just have 10 mana laying around, I think. And so you should not be playing this unless you can either loot it out of your hand or you can pay the green. And
exactly.
in those decks, I think this card, where you can cast it reliably or reliably enough and still pay the green if you can't, it's going to function pretty well because the 10/10 Reach Trample will hit your opponent for a lot of damage, even if they block.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm comfortable giving it a. Hmm.
I
Considering
would be
how.
happy giving.
Go ahead.
I would be happy giving this a 4.5. Like I can see it being like basically if you don't have another big creature in your colors, if you can splash green, I think it's worth it. Um, but otherwise, it's just
Yeah.
going to be relegated to the green XX.
I don't know how much splashing for this one there is going to be, but yeah, I'd say like 4.5 to like 5ish level on
Yeah,
average. Because the
yeah,
front face of it isn't extremely impressive, it's just fine. But the other half is good enough to where you're like, if you can cast it, it will do a lot of work. Scrapwork Cohort is next. This is a 4 mana 3/1, and it comes with a 1/1 staple to it, and you can unearth it for 2 and a white. I, I,
this one
I like
is
this.
actually, yeah, this one's
Yeah.
actually good. I think like,
Yeah, I think this is quite nice. Um, just all the things together, you're getting 4/2 worth of stats across 2 bodies, but you get all of that up front immediately instead of having to wait for it to die. Additionally, it has Unearth, which gets you not only an additional body from the graveyard from this, but also when it enters the battlefield.
yeah,
So all that together, it doesn't seem like a lot, but there's going to be a lot of turns where you're going to be chump blocking big things sometimes, And there's also going to be a lot of turns where you want expendable either soldiers or things to sacrifice. And this does a pretty good job of kind of just doing all that. And all that while also meaning that some of your creatures that would otherwise not be big enough to like double block something can have, you know, a little buddy help them out. I like this card. I'd say this is
Exactly.
a 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next up is Scrapwork Mutt. 2 mana, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. With Unearth for 1 and a
This
red.
card this card's great. This
Yeah,
card's just really good in my mind.
I like this a whole lot more than I like almost any of the other 2/1s in the set for 2.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Looting is really good, and Unearth on something like this is also very good because later in the game, you can just cash this in to pitch a land and draw something else.
Yeah. Plus, it's a dog. It's a good boy. This is the
Yes,
best boy.
yes. All that together, even though like the stat line isn't incredible, means that it has applications. Like 2/1s that loot when they enter the battlefield always do something. They just smooth
Mm,
out your hand, make your late game top decks better. I'm fond of them,
yeah.
and I think I want to
And
give
maybe
this
it comes back
a
later.
5 as well.
Yeah. I would say so. Absolutely.
Maybe even like a 5.5 to be honest. Like if you're
Yeah.
the like aggressive red deck, maybe you're not going to be attacking with this as much as you'd like, but it's still going to be good.
Yeah.
It's still going to be fine. Ooh, but now we have one that's a real powerhouse. And spoiler alert, even though it only has black in the unearth cost, this made my top 5 black commons list.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. Scrapwork Rager. 4 mana 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Well, Phyrexian Rager, every single set it's
Yeah.
been printed in has been very good.
Yeah. Phyrexian Rager is just
It's a really
it
good
just
card.
does work. It just does work. Yeah. They added one more mana to it and gave it one more power and toughness.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, no, no,
I
no.
think
Regular Phyrexian Rager's a 2/2.
oh sorry.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just cost
Oh,
1 more
they
mana and
staple
it's
one more.
colorless.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they staple one more mana to it to make it an artifact and give it honor.
Yeah. So
And
it's still good.
honestly, yeah, it's still really
It's
good.
still good. It turns out drawing cards
It's
is
gonna
good.
block
It blocks a lot of
exactly.
things.
It's gonna block. It's gonna block a 3-drop.
Mhm.
Honestly, but overall, it's gonna draw you 2 cards, and it's gonna deal a little bit of damage as it swings out for one last time.
Like even if it doesn't block a 3, there's a whole bunch of like 4/5s and 5/5s and stuff that are like, oh gosh, how am I going to block this? You just take this and like any other creature, and there you are. And you're happy
Yeah,
to block with this. You're so happy to block with cards like this. That is one of the things about Phyrexian Rager that just pissed me off all the time. Is that in Dominaria United, my favorite deck was Green Red Aggro because I thought it was the best deck in the format.
hmm
And whenever somebody played a Phyrexian Rager, I'm like, oh, okay. Alright. I guess I have to trade a creature away for this stupid thing, or spend a spell to get through it. Otherwise, it's just gonna not stop my creatures from attacking. And it turns out,
exactly.
in a format that's slower, cards like this just get better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then having Unearth is just, icing on the cake. Not only do you get your card back, but especially in black, which, the color the Unearth ability is in, you want to be able to sacrifice things like creatures and artifacts, and this is both. So, altogether,
Yeah,
just a lot of stuff going on here. Pretty hard to make this card bad. You're going to have to fight to get them because almost every single color is going to be happy playing this.
yeah.
Yeah.
You really can't go wrong.
Yeah, this is like a 6. This is a
Yeah,
very, very above par.
absolutely. Yes, and
So,
very open pick as well. Importantly.
indeed. Stone Retrieval Unit. Next, 2/3 for 4 mana. And when it enters the battlefield, you get a tapped Power Stone token. So it's really funny because this is a 4 mana 2/3, and the green one is a 3 mana 3/2.
Yeah. um, I mean, it does its job.
Yeah, it's.
I prefer. Yeah, I prefer the green one, obviously, but this
Yeah.
one, it still does what you need it to. It leaves behind a little bit of extra.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a metric yet for how much I value creating a Power Stone token, but it's probably not worth like plus one or something. So this card wouldn't be great for me, but because it's so open and so available, I could see people putting it into decks just because they've picked it up at some stage, thinking, whatever I'm doing, I can use it.
I think in most decks this will amount to like a 4 at best usually, and in the decks where you really care about having 2 artifacts enter the battlefield in the same turn or something, or sacrifice,
Yeah.
then maybe it goes a little bit higher. But I'm just not like super duper impressed.
Yeah.
Most colors have an ability that like a creature with roughly the same stats and some kind of way to get the tapped Power Stone token for less than 4 mana.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Supply Drop is next. 3 mana artifact with flash. When it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. You can pay 4 mana, sacrifice it, and draw a card.
Uh, yeah.
This is
It works. It's yeah. It's not very. It's fine on the front half. Like 3 mana flash. I. It's hard to justify it. I feel like you're gonna have cards that are better than it, but even still, this card will win a game or two over the time that this set is draftable.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's a combat trick, kind of. It's a really mediocre slow one, and then it can cash itself in for a card. I think you kind of need to care about artifacts entering the battlefield or like sacrificing things for this card to actually be like worth. Otherwise, it's probably below filler, just barely, and then it rises up to like filler level or maybe a little bit
yeah,
higher.
yeah, I would say so.
It's just not very impressive. It's just fine.
Exactly. It's nothing. It's nothing to talk about
Yeah.
really.
Swift Gear Drake, 5 mana, 2/4 flying and haste. And when it enters the battlefield, put up to one target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. Well, so
I mean,
two
it
four
can
haste.
kind of work. Yeah.
2/4 haste is not the worst stat line, but I mean,
Haste, yeah, haste makes me want to attack. 2/4 makes me want to block.
yeah.
This is the problem I see with Swift
Yeah.
Gear Drake.
I mean, it beats the hell out of Rock Hunter, but that's not a very big plus.
Yeah.
not a big
I mean,
plus there.
this card is fine, especially if you pick up, an equipment or two. If you've got some auras, flyers, really good at holding those.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I'm just not very impressed. I'm gonna put this at I'd say a 4.
yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. Like a creature with flying and haste, you kind of want to attack with it, but like the 2 power is just, it's not enough to pose a serious threat. It's not a very big clock. Tokazia's
Yeah.
Onulet? I think.
Yes, on your list, yes.
5 mana 4/4. When it leaves the battlefield, you gain 2 life and you can unearth it for 3 and a white. Well, 5 mana 4/4 is honestly not the worst stat line.
It really isn't. Yeah.
In this set, especially. I think this is just a tiny bit above serviceable. I want to put it at like 4.5 to 5-ish range. Just because I think
Yeah.
5 mana 4/4s with some amount of upside are fine. Especially like you can technically play this in any deck if you just need something at 5 to kind of hold back smaller creatures and help you tussle with bigger ones. You can do worse than this.
It's good. Yeah. It's a very serviceable card. Like even if I can't cast, even if I can't use the unearth ability necessarily, I'm still, I'm not happy about running it, but I'm not upset. If I can use the unearth ability, I'm actually feeling pretty all right.
Yeah. Veteran's Power Blade is next. 3 mana equipment, +2/+0. You can equip for 2 mana, or you can equip a soldier for white mana. Well,
So I mean, obviously it gets better in soldier deck.
but not even that much. I mean,
Yeah,
it does get better, but like, really, all that means is that instead of like equipping and you're like, I spent 2 mana, you get to unequip and equip to different things pretty interchangeably. Pretty much wherever you want this
yeah,
to be in any point in the turn, it will go there and it's not going to cost you a whole lot.
yeah, exactly. This is an ability you can spend Power Stone mana on pretty comfortably, not feel bad about it. It's something where I I always think the first equipment you pick up in any draft is worth so much more than any other equipment you could possibly get because it's such a good mana sink. Even though there are, other mana sinks in the set, this is one where you can, attack with a certain number of things, then move it over to somewhere else, make blocks really hard for them.
Yeah. Even so, I don't really know how I feel about this equipment. Honestly, I like the wings a little bit more because they grant flying.
I think the wings are better. Yes.
And then I almost kind of like
Um,
the thing with Menace as well a little bit better.
yeah, that one's a little harder to activate because you do actually need black
Yeah.
for it.
Although, honestly,
Um,
in Soldiers, I think this is kind of the only deck where the Power Blade really fits too well anyway, because the +2/+0
yeah.
is usually best on those 1/1 Soldier tokens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of attaching it to Swiftgear Drake.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at that point, like, almost any equipment's just get on flyers, you know? Like,
It's true. I mean, yeah, it's just any equipment and any flyer
yeah. Turns out flying
makes
creatures,
it work.
good and limited. Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
But yeah, like the 3 on the face and then the 2 on the back, unless you want to pay white mana. If you have it for soldiers, um, it all just irons out to a playable equipment. And if you're in soldiers, I think it gets a good bit better than playable. Yeah, so I want to start this, if you're not in soldiers, at like probably a 4. And then if you are in soldiers, this goes up quite a bit more to like a 5.5 probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all the common colorless cards. Now we have a doozy here in the uncommon slot.
Yes.
First we have Argivian Avenger. This is 6 mana for a 5/5, and you can pay 1 mana to give it Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, or Haste until end of turn, and -1/-1. So you can technically
Yeah.
give it all of these, but then it will be a 1/1.
Then it becomes a 1/1. Yeah.
Yes.
And sadly, for all of you red black fans here, no, activating it 5 times isn't technically sacrificing it. I know. It's so
Yeah.
sad. um, I
Although,
think this
if you
is.
steal this from an opponent, you can activate it 5 times.
You can, yeah. No, if you are, yeah, if you threaten this, not
Yep.
bad.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
it's but
The threat of, yeah, the threat of giving, the threat of giving this death touch at any given time, or having it be a flying blocker at any given time, is very powerful.
yeah,
I feel like I wouldn't be activating the haste here, very often, but I feel like I would play this on 6, and then I would happily go like vigilance attack in, and then figure out what I want from there with a potentially flying death touch blocker
yeah. I
afterwards.
think most of the time you'll be giving it like flying to get over things, or vigilance if it can attack on the ground profitably as a 4/4. If they have a bigger thing, you have the death touch there, and if you have plenty of mana laying around, you can technically haste and flying it to get a 3/3 into the sky. It's pretty versatile,
Yeah,
and the fact that it only costs colorless mana means that you can kind of shore up that cost a little bit with Power Stones. And all that together, I think, adds this up to be like a 5.
yeah, yeah.
Astronaut's Harvester, 2 mana, 3/1. And when it attacks, you can exile a card from a graveyard. Well, you must exile target card from a graveyard if one exists. It is not a May ability.
Yeah, it is not a May ability. Sadly, if you're building an unearthed deck in standard, if you mill too many unearthed cards into your graveyard, you have to exile them.
Yeah. It also has Unearth
Uh,
for 1 and a black. Even so, I don't really think this card's that good.
no, we've already talked a lot about 2 mana 3/1s and their place in this set. Even with the unearth ability, you're like this is a hate card, and hate cards depend on your opponent doing something,
Yeah.
which automatically makes them a bit worse here.
It just doesn't feel like you're really going to get a lot of utility out of this. I'm content to give it like a 4.
Yeah.
Combat Thresher's next. 7 mana 3/3 with double strike, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Or a 2 and a white 1/1 with the same abilities. Um,
Again, this is a great creature. Double strike. You love this ability to put an aura on, to put an equipment on. Um,
yeah, I like this. I like this
honestly,
card.
yeah, honestly, like if I just look at it as the prototype ability, 2 and a white, double strike, 1/1, and when it ETBs you draw a card, I would play that card a decent number of the time, especially in a set where there are so many one toughness things. This is like
So
it's gonna gum up combat so much.
look at it as a white Phyrexian Rager with a bonus mode of being a 7 mana 3/3.
Exactly. It's very good.
Yes,
It's very good.
it's a really good card. I don't exactly know if it's the first pick, but if you start out with the baseline of Phyrexian Rager with no life loss and you get better from there, um, I kind of feel like it has to be around like a 6.5, and probably like close to a 7.
Yeah. This is right below like the better rares, like
Yeah,
the draft playable rares.
yeah. It's just hard to make the card bad. If you could pay for the small cost, this card's incredible. And if you can't, um, yeah, it's still gonna be fine. Like you could do
Yeah.
worse. It's still gonna trade for like
Exactly.
a
I
whole
mean,
lot of the bigger
if you can't,
creatures.
yeah. If you can't, hopefully you've got some other way to buff it up because that's a lot of damage you can send in pretty quickly.
Here's an interesting one, and I don't really know exactly what it's trying to do. 6 mana 3/6 called Cradle Clear Cutter, and you can add an amount of green equal to its power, or you can make it a 1/3 for 3 mana. I don't
I
really
don't
think that
understand this
ramp
card
creatures.
either.
Yeah, I don't know what's this.
Yeah, have you heard of the famous I think it's Lotus Drake?
No.
It's a 7 mana 2/2 flyer that you can tap to add 3 mana. That's a worse card than this, but it's still this card is still horrendous.
Yeah.
Um,
This card's just
yeah,
not
like
doing
I
anything for
don't
you.
I don't want to be playing a 3 mana mana dork. I don't want to be playing a 6 mana mana dork. No, thank you. Just no.
Like the versatility that you're getting here is just not very good. Like the top end of this, the 6 mana 3/6, is just not good. It's just like
Yeah,
it can hold back creatures that you can hold back with smaller things anyway. It doesn't attack very well either. And then the front side of it, you just don't really need that effect either. I'm content giving this a 3. Just don't play Cradle Clear Cutter. Next up is Philology Dragon Engine. This is an 8 mana 5/5 flyer, and you can pay 2 to give it +1/+0 until end of turn, or a 2 and a red 1/3 with the same abilities.
this one I'm a lot more positive on.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like
again,
this.
you're paying 3 mana for a 1/3, but
It has flying, and you can pump it. That's
exactly.
all
I
you need
mean,
to know.
it's an inefficient pump, but you can be spending, you can be spending your power stones on,
Oh, I have no
which is
doubt
all
that
right.
people are going to be pumping like 8 mana into this.
Absolutely. I
Between
wouldn't be
between
surprised if
Power
people
Stones
just
and lands.
yeah, it's
Like
gonna be a lot of damage very
the
quickly.
Dragon Whelp from
Yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I would see
this
that
doesn't
thing.
explode.
Yeah, I would see that thing get pumped right before exploding, so many times.
Yeah.
And this is just this version of it. Obviously, it's a little more expensive, a little more clunky, but it's still going to play just fine. And the fact that you get the versatility of having either side means that it's not as bad as it would be otherwise. I would not play this card probably unless you could pay the red.
Yeah. I mean, 8 mana 5/5 flying is good if you can cast it, but casting it is the problem, right?
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
if you
a
can't pay
lot
the
of these
red,
cards are
this
good if you
is
can cast it, and you just can't cast it.
yeah.
So
If you can't pay the red and you don't have like reliable ways to cast this, it's probably a three. If you can cast it and you can't pay the red, it's probably like a four. And if you can cast it and you can pay the red, then this is probably closer to like a five. Perfectly serviceable.
yeah,
Better than
perfect.
a great many other cards. Haywire Might is next. One single mana for a 1/1. When it dies, you gain 2 life, and you can sacrifice it to exile target non creature artifact or non creature enchantment.
I think this is a pretty good card. Um, like I wouldn't. I like it. Doesn't feel great if you can't activate the ability, obviously, but it's a 1 mana creature that's gonna block some 2 mana 3/1s and gum up the board a bit, and eventually, like even if green's not your main color, you'll eventually grab it and take out something important.
So we've seen most of the artifacts in this set already, besides a few of the ones below this, especially all the ones that common. The ones that you care about blowing up are usually creatures, with only a
Oh,
handful of
absolutely.
exceptions. So
Yes.
I
If
think
this
this is kind of a sideboard card. I don't
Okay,
think I
yeah,
really
I
want to
would
main deck
I
this.
would yeah, I would suggest yeah, there are definitely more non-creature artifacts below this.
Yeah.
But it's certainly yeah, this certainly isn't like a first pick or anything. It doesn't even go into every green deck. But I think if I don't have anything else to do with green, I think I'm pretty alright with it.
Yeah. Heavyweight Demolisher is next. This is a 7 mana 8/6 with Menace, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you need to tap it unless you pay 3. It also has Unearth for 6 red red. Um, well, I mean,
Yeah,
it does attack. It does attack. That's what it does for sure.
it does. It
So,
doesn't have haste is the
yeah,
problem. Yeah, so you're going to be paying 10 mana before you get one attack with this guy.
yeah.
Um
Menace ensures that you're not getting chump blocked wholly, which I think is
yeah,
the only thing that really keeps this card afloat. Otherwise, I think I would be off it completely. I'd have it as like
yeah.
a 4 or probably less. But with the Menace attached to it, I think at 7 mana it's actually pretty reasonable. And
Yeah.
it's just a card that you
You're
definitely want to be on the offense with.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. With that in mind, I think I'm content to give this like a 4.5. It is above replacement level, but not by like a ton. If you're on the defense, this card is just replacement level. If you're on offense, it's a solid.
Mm,
And the unearth
yeah.
ability is pretty expensive, but immediately coming in 8/6 menace means well they're not jumping because it has menace, and you don't have to
Yeah.
pay the 3 to like keep it from tapping because it has been unearthed, and not everybody can afford to take 8 damage. So yeah,
No, it's
I think it's fine.
yeah.
Hulking Metamorph is next. This is a 9 mana 7/7 with you may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of an artifact or creature you control, except it's an artifact
Yeah.
creature in addition to its other types, and its power and toughness are equal to Hulking Metamorph's power and toughness. So you can copy any creature or artifact you control, except it's also a 7/7 artifact creature, or you can pay 2 and 2 blue for a 3/3 with that same ability. Um, I'm gonna be real. A lot of the times, This is
Yeah.
extremely context dependent, and the fact that it can only copy your stuff means that you really need to be looking at some pretty cool things to copy for this to matter. And at that point, you probably just want the 4 mana version anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
I would not play this
yeah.
if you can't pay the blue. If you can't play
Yeah,
blue,
basically,
this
yeah.
is not a
The
playable
blue
card.
is so. I'm not paying 9 mana for a clone.
No,
No,
for only one
it's
of your
not
things and
happening.
only a 7/7.
Yeah,
It's just not a
exactly.
playable card if you can't do that.
Yeah,
But like
exactly.
with those abilities, you need to be copying some pretty cool stuff. Not too cool for like a 4 mana 3/3 because that's honestly like kind of on rate for what the set's giving you anyway. But like I just wish that this card was anything on the battlefield. Even so, I
Yeah,
think there's some pretty cool stuff for you to copy. A lot of things have enter the battlefield abilities, and other things have activated abilities. And I never think you're going to be in a situation where you can't have the 4 mana version of this do something. Even if it's just be a 3/3, that's still about on par for this set. So I think this card starts out at around a 4 base, and then it only gets better from there. If you're playing blue, and if you're not
yeah.
playing
Just
blue,
about
don't play the card.
don't play it. Yeah,
Yes. Iron Craw Crusher is a 7 mana 4/6 with whenever it attacks, target attacking creature gets plus X plus O, where X is this creature's power. And then 4 mana 2/5 is the other version with the same ability.
yeah. This is perfectly serviceable. It attacks. So if you pay the green cost, it attacks as a 4 mana 4/5.
Yeah,
If you pay the 7 mana cost, it attacks as 7 mana 8/6.
yeah.
It's perfectly serviceable. You can give the power to something else that can utilize it better as well. But in either case, it's got a big enough toughness that I think it's going to stick around. And it's going to get multiple attacks, and you're going to get that value.
Yeah, honestly,
I think this card might actually be good.
I think it is good off the back of the 4 mana 2/5 because that just holds back a lot of things, and you can combine that with a lot of the dorkier creatures in the format to set up really good double blocks. So I think this card is actually around a 5, bordering on like 5.5.
Yeah,
Levitating Statues next. This is a 2 mana artifact with flying. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a counter on it, and you can pay 2 to make it a 1/1 construct artifact creature until end of turn. So, if you're not casting
so this
non-creature
is
spells, this card does nothing.
yeah, this is like the one card where I'm like, oh, remember that? You put 2/1/1 counters on something, then it turns into a creature.
Yeah,
This is like the one card I was thinking of. It's like that kind of works here because it becomes a flying creature and it grows further. You don't
yeah,
need to pay extra
yeah.
costs. This is like the only case where that card I feel is good.
Even so, you're spending 2 cards and 6 mana to create a card that is only
A three
slightly
three.
better. No,
Yeah.
a 4/4. Wait, no,
Uh,
no, 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 no. It would be a 3.
yeah, it'll
Oh
be a three
God.
three because you don't get the
Oh
one
no.
one based.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it would actually be the same as the flash flying blue 3/3 flyer, except
Yeah.
no flash and 2 cards. Um, it turns out combining 2 average to bad cards together to make a average card it's not really the best game plan for Magic. I think you really need to be in a very specific deck with like a lot of time on your hands and a lot of spells to make this anything other than bad.
Yeah, you better be playing like blue green, ready to cast like infinite infinite non creature
Yeah.
spells.
And
So
there's just a hard cap on how good this card can be. I'm just not terribly convinced. Um, maybe it does something, but I don't think it will. I'm on 3 for this.
yeah.
Yeah. Mask of the Jade Crafter's next. This is a 2 mana artifact with pay X, tap sacrifice to make an XX colorless golem artifact creature token. Activate only as a sorcery, and it also has Unearth for 2 and a green. Um, Power stones can be used to pay for the primary cost of well, all of this stuff except for the green mana and the unearth.
Yeah.
So you make a big thing, and then you can bring it back later and make a thing that's big but -3.
This is secretly not a green card. Um, this is secretly like a blue card or a white card. Where you just haven't drafted a big creature, so you're like, oh, whatever, I'll throw this in. Play it on turn 2, wait till like turn 6 or something, then make a 6/6.
Yeah, I'd say in most decks this kind of equates to just having like an X spell in your deck, which
Yeah.
is perfectly fine, especially in this set. I think it's probably better than average. So I
Yeah.
would I would start this card at a 5, and then it kind of only gets better from there.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the unearth on this really isn't great
Yeah,
because you need to activate it that turn or else it
yeah.
sacrifices itself.
But it is on Earth, so
So
it's free. It's just a bonus
yeah,
on
it's
top.
free. There's no downside to having it, and I think this is secretly a good card in most decks, or in a lot of decks, I should say.
I would agree. Mishra's research desk is somehow a card name, and this is a 1 mana not legendary artifact with pay one,
Yeah,
tap, sacrifice to exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them until the end of your next turn. You may play that card, and you can unearth it for 1 and a red. Um. So let me get this. Let me get this
yeah.
all in my head here. We're looking
So
at you're paying 2 mana to look at the top 2 and get one of them. So it just
yeah,
replaces itself if you do that for 2 mana. And then later
and
on, you
then
get pay
it's
another 2 mana and then another 1 mana. So 3 mana more, and you get to do it again.
yeah,
So round
and you
trip,
can't
you're
even
doing
split up the second half.
yeah round trip. You're doing a 5 mana divination, but you get to look at 4 cards and choose the best 2, and you don't get to keep them forever. You have a time limit
Yeah,
on them.
I think this card is a lot better than the
Yes, I agree.
which
The
one?
blue one, the blue artifact
Yeah,
where you
the
pay
blue one.
2.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree.
This one's a lot better than the blue one. Mostly because you can sort of leave it around for a while until you need that card.
Yeah,
Again, the unearth ability here is just horrendous, honestly. Um, but if you need it, you're gonna need it, and
yeah,
it's on the card. You may as well use it.
yeah. I don't think
So
this is bad. I actually think this is actually much more serviceable by like a lot. I actually think it's pretty good. The fact that it only costs 1 mana, it's not restricted to any color, means you can just kind of toss it out there as an artifact to do whatever your artifact things need. You pay 1 to sacrifice it. In the early game, you're going to be looking for a land probably. You get one of those if you want to. Um, Unearth means that you could do it again later if you want to cash it in for something else. I just think all that combines relatively well to make a card that is super duper easy to play and not super costly for you. The opportunity cost is relatively low, and you're probably always going to get your cards back.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm gonna start this at a in red where you can unearth it at A5, and in not red at A4. Just replacement level because it
yeah,
replaces itself. Next up
yeah,
is a
exactly.
Reconstructed Thopter, 2/1 flying unearth 2.
I think this one's good. A flyer is just good, and it's 3 mana for a 2/1 flyer isn't great, but sometimes you just have to take what you can get.
Yeah, I would say it's just above replacement for me. I think 4.5 is where I'm gonna stick this. If
Yeah,
your opponent just does not have a lot of ways to interact with flying creatures, this is gonna get in for a healthy amount. If they do,
yeah,
and when I say if they do, I mean almost anything with reach. This will trade for some of them still, but
yeah,
sometimes it'll just get outclassed.
absolutely.
Yeah, but if you want flying, it does do it. Slagstone
Does do it.
Refinery is next. This is a 4 mana artifact with whenever it or a non token artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield or is put into exile from the battlefield. That would include getting exiled due to unearth. Create a tapped Power Stone token. This is uh, expensive to play,
This
and
is
then you have to do extra work. This is a constructed card.
this is a constructor card. Like you're gonna be like this is gonna be a standard all star, basically. Um, and that's about it,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. I don't expect this to do
It's not
much of
even gonna be
anything
an
in
all
draft.
star. It's gonna be a standard card. That's there's. I don't think you're gonna be able to do it here
So I
in
think
this.
the reason that you can't do anything with this in draft is because there's not just like sacrifice something for free to get a benefit. Almost everything that
Yeah,
sacrifices has like a cost associated. There's no like KCI. The only way I see this doing anything is if you're playing like a yeah. Oh,
what if
go
they put a
nuts!
KCI into standard? Oh my god,
I mean, it might be in like the mystical archive slot, so yeah, hell, go nuts, buddy. But
that would be very funny.
but no, so the red 3 drop that when you sacrifice an artifact, you get like +1/+1 and deal a damage. You can do
Yeah,
stuff with that, I guess. That's it though. That's like
yeah,
that's
that's
the only thing I'm seeing at common or uncommon that makes this even remotely playable, and it does not seem like it's more than like a cutesy little combo, and not even an
yeah.
especially good one. Yeah, you would need a critical massive artifacts for that, and by the time you're doing that, you don't have to play this bad card. You just have a good enough combo on your own with that card and artifacts. Next up is a Spectrum Sentinel. 1 mana, 1/2 with protection from multicolored, and whenever a non basic land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life. This is a constructed card. This card does
This
nothing.
is a constructor card. Yeah, it's not going to do anything for you
No.
here.
There's like there's 10 multicolor cards at uncommon, and then there's a
Yeah.
handful of rares, and you probably can't
Maybe they'll
profitably
play a
block.
non-basic land. It's possible they'll play a non-basic
And
land, but
that's it. This card does nothing. It just doesn't do anything.
yeah, this card does nothing. Play it if you absolutely desperately need a one drop for some reason.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's an artifact. It costs 1. That's all. That's what you get.
that's it. That's it. That's all
Spotter
it does.
Thoughter,
Yeah.
8 mana, 4/5, flying. When it enters the battlefield, scry X, where X is its power. Or you could play it as a 4 mana, 2/3 with those abilities. Hmm. So,
Yeah.
uh,
If I try to compare this to like Muldrifter, I don't know. It's crazy what mana. Because if so, a 3 mana 2/3 fire.
yeah, I think the Scry 4 is good, and it comes at a stage in the game where Scry 4 is strong enough to be considered like roughly equivalent to drawing a card. But even so, like the front side of it is just worse than a lot of the 4 mana flyers.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I'm just not like overly impressed with this card. Like 8 mana 4/5
No,
flyer that would draws a card, I'd be a little bit higher on. But obviously 4 mana 2/3 flyer draw a card would be a little bit much. Um,
yeah. I mean, I think if there was some way to flicker this,
yeah.
although I just realized what flickering does with prototype. Understandable.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it's yeah. There's a good reason there's no flicker in this set, and
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
it's
fine.
probably not going to work out great.
Yeah, I don't think you should play this card if you can't pay the blue cost, and if you can play the blue cost, I think this is still replacement level.
Yeah, basically.
So it's a 4 for me. And moving on to Steel Exemplar. This is a 5 mana 4/4 with Trample, and it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it unless 2 or more colors of mana were spent to cast it. So, notably, that means you could pay for like 3 mana with one color and then like 2 power stones, or you could pay all 5 mana with one single color. But if you pay like a green and a white and 3, well, congratulations, it's just a 4/4. Even so, I think this card is quite
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the baseline is 5 mana 4/4 with trample, and honestly, that's not that bad. That actually holds down the board pretty well in this set. And then like the high point is a not too difficult to reach 5 mana 6/6, which is actually quite large. And it comes at a stage in the
Yeah.
game where you're going to be able to attack quite profitably into most things, and all that adds up together to be roughly equivalent to a 5.5 for me, bordering on 6.
Yeah. I it just it's just enough, honestly.
Yeah,
Um yeah,
like the
in a
fail
lot of
case
ways.
is just like fine. Fail case is just fine. Like
Yeah,
you're
it's
you're not
reasonable.
mad at a 5 mana 4/4 in this set.
Yeah, like
That
maybe you're a little sad
yeah.
that you that you don't have a 6/6, but it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Life goes on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when you get the 5 mana 6/6, you're like, oh well, okay, that's really good. It tussles with some of the big mechas that cost like 8 mana, and then or 6 mana in a few of them as well, and 7 mana
Yeah.
as well. A bunch of those, and then all of the smaller creatures it easily handles. Suchi Cave Guard is next. This is an 8 mana 8/8 with vigilance and somehow not ward 8. Um,
That
I'm disappointed.
at that stage you just put at that stage you just put Hexproof, right? If it's Ward 8.
I know, but like it's an 8/8 for 8, and when it dies, you add 8 mana. Come on.
Ward 4 is basically it's basically
But it's an
Hexproof
8/8 for
anyway.
8, and you add 8 mana. How do
I
you make the
know.
only other number on it 4?
They didn't learn the Grizzlebrand lesson.
It hurts.
It does hurt. It's not a good feeling.
Either way, Ward 4 is a big number. Unfortunately, Ward 4 also is payable by way of Power Stone.
Sure is.
Um,
Yes.
I don't really know exactly what you're supposed to be doing with the 8 mana besides just casting more big things. Like, I guess you can kind of chain this into something else if it ends up dying in combat or something, if it's on your turn anyway. It has vigilance, so
Yeah.
it obviously wants you to turn it sideways every turn, which is cool. I like that. In
Yeah.
fact, the fact that it is an 8/8 with vigilance honestly puts it pretty far above most of the other uh, random prototype creatures that just have really bad faces. The problem is it doesn't have prototype. You have to pay the full 8
It
mana,
doesn't.
and
Yeah.
that is a cost. That is a real cost. So if you're in a deck where you can pay the 8 mana, this card's actually quite good. If you're not,
Yeah.
this card is just awful.
Yeah,
Um,
basically.
so it's a real sink or swim, like kind of a build around. You need to be in the deck that wants to cast big things, and once you're in there, this card is going to play like probably about a 6. And if you're not in that deck, then this card is going to be below replacement level at around a 3. I like vigilance
Mm.
on gigantic creatures. And Ward 4 helps make sure
Yeah.
that you're not going to get just, randomly hit by some random removal spell. If they do have one, it's going to cost them a lot of mana.
Yeah, basically.
Symmetry Matrix is a
Ooh.
complicated card name for a maybe complicated card. 4 mana.
Maybe.
Whenever a creature with power equal to its toughness enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. Well, it turns out we just passed up an 8/8 and a 4/4. And above that, we have Mask of the Jadecrafter, which makes an even power and toughness. Above that, we have another even one. Two even ones above that. Two
Yeah.
even ones above that. There's a lot of things with even power and toughness,
There are,
but you do need to
but I'm
count that
very
when you're making your deck.
yes. Also, I'm sad to say it is 5 mana to draw one card,
Yes.
replace itself.
So
6 mana to draw two.
yes,
Like that ability is great, but you have to pay 4 mana straight up.
yes.
It's
It costs you a card
I
to
mean,
play this, and then after your first card is when you start to get any kind of profit.
yeah,
And
I can
usually
see it
cards like this are
working.
not that good.
Yeah, exactly. I can see it working, but like unless your deck really works with it, like it pays off everything, be careful. Be a
Yeah.
little careful of it.
If like 75% of your creatures are triggering this, and you have like 16 creatures, which is a pretty big number, that's going to be 12 creatures in your deck that are going to turn this on. And you have to play all of them after this if you want to get the value. And that's
Yeah,
only about one quarter of your deck. So one out of every
yeah.
four cards or so you can play after this and pay extra for it and draw a card. It's just a lot of
Uh,
work. A lot of work is involved there. I
it
just
is a
don't
lot of
think
work.
this is very, very worth. I think this
I
is
don't think
not
it's
that
gonna
good.
work well for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd probably give that like a 3 or so. Just not really very reliable. Thran Power Suit is next, and this is a 2 mana artifact equipment. It gets plus one. Equipped creature gets plus one for each aura and each equipment attached to it, and has ward 2, and you can equip for 2. So
I
baseline,
would
this
say the
gives you
most important,
plus one, and ward 2.
yeah. So I would say, yeah, the important part is Ward 2. You
Yes.
know, slapping this onto your 5 drop, giving it Ward 2, legitimately is annoying as hell.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
and I mean, if you're drafting more equipments as well, it doesn't hurt. Once you get two of these together, that's pretty spicy. You know, plus four, you
Plus
need to
4,
pay
and
the equip
ward
twice.
4.
Ward 4, that's pretty good.
Yes.
But again, Ward is slightly worse than normal here because of Power Stone. So it's, removal is already limited. So it's hard. It's hard to evaluate this one,
Yeah, the
and it's
removal
very
is.
context dependent on how many equipment you
I
have.
agree. I don't really think this is a format where you want to play too many equipments. I think in general, you probably want a high creature count in this format, and to have most of your creatures like do things, so that late in the game you can kind of spit out your bigger creatures and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That said, Thran Power Suit I like. I think the Ward 2 is a pretty big bonus in a set with clunky removal like this one. And I'd be surprised if it was bad. I think this is perfectly serviceable.
Yeah,
I'm
perfectly
inclined to give
reasonable.
it probably at least a 4.5, and maybe the chance to give it more depending on what the set kind of irons out to look like. Whether or not this is just a little bit too slow.
Yeah.
Transmogrant Altar is 3 mana for an artifact with pay a black, tap, sacrifice a creature, add 3 colorless, or 2 tap, sacrifice a creature, create a 3/3 colorless zombie artifact creature token, activate only as a sorcery. Very interesting set of abilities. Um,
Yeah.
I don't really get exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with this. I guess you could turn your 1/1
I-
soldiers into 3/3 zombies.
Yeah, there's that. It is a mana rock in a sense. You
Yeah,
do need
just
to
a
sacrifice creatures for it. It's a
extremely
very good
hard.
sacrifice
Yeah,
outlet. It's a very good sacrifice outlet
yeah,
for red black.
but it only sacrifices creatures. And to be honest, there's not that many expendable creatures in Black Red. Most of them are just like literal creatures that you have to play, and that's it. They have some value on them, but like most of what you want to sacrifice in most colors is Power Stone tokens, unfortunately. And this doesn't really do that. Also, it
Yeah.
costs 3 by itself anyway. I don't know. I just feel like this doesn't really give you back enough for what it's asking from you, especially since it costs a card.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I think I want to give it a 3. I don't really know what it's going for, but it does not seem as good as just playing creatures, probably. Yochin Frontliner, 1 mana, 1 1. When it attacks another target creature you control with +1/+1 until end of turn, then you can unearth it for a single white mana.
Perfectly serviceable. You don't need to be in white for it. This is the sort of one that I'm actually not upset about running. Um, it's not first pick material, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, how many turns do you think you're going to be attacking with it?
I mean, if it helps get something else through, it could be good.
Well, are you content with it just being blocked profitably if it lets your other creature hit for 1 more damage?
I mean, you use it judiciously. This isn't the sort of it's not forced to attack. You
Yes.
make the choices, and it can be on the defense if it needs to be. Sometimes you just need a one drop artifact to get some balls rolling. You
Yeah.
know.
I just usually like cards like this. Did you play any Ixalan?
No, I didn't. Just came in
So
after.
they had a white I want to say it was like a 1 drop vampire that gave a target attacking vampire +1/+1. And that card
Okay.
was really good because it had flying
Yeah.
and it buffed vampires, which were a really good like
Yes.
tribal set, tribal
Yeah.
tribe.
Absolutely. That makes sense.
I just feel like the 1/1 body just isn't doing enough on its own unless you're
Yeah.
in a color combination where you really just want to cram things. It is a soldier, so if you're maybe like you got like 2 lords and some other soldier synergies and some equipment, this could be better. But I think the setup cost is quite high. So if you are in one of those decks and you have those setups, I think this goes up massively, definitely to above par. If you're not, and this is just a 1/1 that has some marginal utility when it attacks, it's much worse, I think.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now we have just some retro frame artifacts. Now
Yes, we do.
in regular booster packs, there will be one of these, correct?
Yes, one per pack. So they will have a distribution, so you're more likely to get uncommon mythic rares. There are no commons in this.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you will see these cards, probably not all of them, but a good number of them just randomly, sporadically throughout your draft experience. And you'll need to know at least what they do. So here we are. First off is Bonesaw. It's 0 mana and it equips for 1 and it gives +1/+0.
yeah,
It is an equipment if you care about those. This
it
is a
is
very,
an
very cheap
equipment.
one.
Yeah,
+1/+0 is not exactly the best in the world, but it does kind of bridge the gap between some of the smaller creatures and some of the bigger toughnesses. And I think
absolutely.
the best deck that it goes in is probably soldiers. Those 1/1 soldier tokens just love wearing stuff like this. That said, I don't think Bonesaw is going to be winning too many awards. So I think at the best of times, it's going to be like a little bit above replacement level. And most other times, it's going to be pretty average, if not worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not expecting much out of this card. If you open it, it's probably not a pick one.
Burnished Heart, 3 mana 2/2, and you can pay 3 and sacrifice it to go get 2 lands and put them on the battlefield tapped.
This
Um,
card's good.
yeah,
This card is actually good.
this card's solid. It
You know, you block something, you know, you
yeah.
fade their attack and then go grab some lands, or you use it as like you use it with some sacrifice triggers, or you
Yeah,
know,
people still play this card in Commander, and even though I think it's
yeah,
actually pretty bad in Commander, people still play it. So if it's good enough there, it's good enough for limited. Play this card.
you can
I
get
give
kind
this
of anything in colorless round.
yeah. I'd say this is probably a 5. It's above replacement. Chromatic Stars
Yes,
next. This is a single mana for an artifact that says sacrifice it after you pay 1 and add 1 mana of any color. And when it's put into the graveyard from a battlefield, draw a card.
the only it has sacrifice
Yeah,
synergies, and technically, if you're going for like lots of colors, could be good, but it's not really doing anything much past
yeah.
that.
It is kind of like textbook replacement level unless you have the sacrifice energy. Literally, is just a cantrip. It costs 1 mana the whole way through to do the whole thing. Uh, you get your mana back when you crack it, and you get your card back when you crack it. It's kind of just a freebie. Uh,
Yeah,
if there's nothing else in the pack, just take it. It just makes your deck more consistent. With that in mind,
yeah,
it starts out at a 4, and if you have synergies, it gets better. Elsewhere
yeah.
Flask, 2 mana. When it enters, you draw a card, and you can sacrifice it to choose a basic land type and have each land you control become that type until end of turn. So this does not a whole lot unless you put it in a deck where uh, you have sacrifice synergies or you randomly have a monocolor card and not a monocolor deck.
Yes, exactly. If you've got the monocolored cards and you're like, I will bet on my elsewhere flask to get me value. No, don't do it.
It's
Don't,
a
please
bad
don't.
bet, but you can do it.
Yeah,
Yeah. There are other ways in the set to play for a 2 mana artifact that draws a card. This is not the best one. I uh, I would say this is below replacement level, somewhere around a 3. Boundary Inspector is 3 mana for a 3/2 with artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This is good.
yeah.
This
This
has
card,
a lot of
yeah, this card
artifacts.
is very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, this card is very good here.
yeah.
Um,
It's like it gives you a power stone, uh, just in itself that you don't have to tap.
yeah,
It's
exactly. Power Stone for every spell you play.
yeah, it's quite good. It's not like incredible, but it's perfectly serviceable. If nothing else, if you're drafting in person, you should pick it up for the retro frame because people really like those. I'm giving
Yeah,
this
I'm gonna be looking for on.
yeah with a relevant ability on a fine body. I'm giving this a 5.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ichor Wellspring. There's a good number of ways to sacrifice artifacts, so Ichor Wellspring, I think I'm gonna give a 5 as well. It's one of the
It's a
better
five if you're in
things.
red black. Yeah,
Yeah, like
or if you've got
you
the
could just play it in your
sacrificing.
deck as a 4 and it'll be perfectly fine. And there's a lot
Yeah,
of other
exactly.
little like things that care about you playing artifacts to get benefits,
Mm,
and this is perfectly suitable for that.
yeah, turning artifacts into creatures, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Ivory Tower. This card's bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't
So
play this
for
card.
Ivory Tower, you want to hold. Um,
Hold a billion
don't
cards in
do
your
it.
hand and gain a billion life. And
Wow,
have fun with that. And it's not a good plan. Don't do it.
don't
But
do it. Like the maximum upside is every every turn you get 3 life.
woo.
Um, but for that to happen, you need to play 1 card a turn.
Yeah, and have
Not
seven
even
cards in
one
your
spell a
hand
turn. It's one
during your
card a
upkeep.
turn. So it's land, spell sort of thing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not good.
it's
Jalen
not good.
Tome is next. This is 3 mana artifact with 2 tap, draw a card, then discard a card. Um, yeah, it's pretty slow, but this is probably a relatively slow format. I think you could do worse. However, you're never going to get your actual card back unless you're pitching a literal dead card.
Yeah, I'm not super excited to pick this.
But it'll play.
It exists.
Yeah,
I would rather have like Mishra, as
yeah. I'd say this is starting out at like a 4.5 ish. Liquimetal coating. I'm really disappointed that they printed this and not the Liquimetal torque.
Oh, the new one.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
because I mean that's just a
I
much
mean, this
much better
card
card.
was. I think this card was getting a little expensive actually.
Was it?
So
Damn. I don't know why they printed it just a strictly better version of it.
Well, I guess I mean every single deck that runs Khan, War of the Spark Khan, runs this card as well. So
Ah, yeah, that makes sense. So there aren't really that many reasons to turn something into an artifact unless you have ways to blow it up. It's hard to get your card back from
yeah,
this. I don't think it's very good at all. Don't play
no,
it.
probably not.
Millstone, 2 mana, pay 2 tap, target player mills 2 cards. I don't think this is doing anything. I
The
guess
only
you could
thing this is doing
slowly
is
but
milling
surely grind
yourself.
through. Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, you can mill yourself for green black, but it's yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's worth. I'm sure somebody will find a way to make like a deck with like 3 of these and just mill their opponent out, but it's probably just not good. Mishra's Bauble. You can play it. It's free. It replaces itself, and
Yeah.
you get your card back. It's just making your deck slightly more consistent. Although if you have it in your opening hand, it does make your hand technically slightly worse because it's this card being traded for an unknown. And generally, you like
Yeah.
having info in your opening hands. That said, I'd say it's a 4. It is quite literally a 23rd card. I would rather play a real card over it, probably, but you could play it and it's not going to really cost you too much.
Yeah.
Ornithopter,
It holds equipment. No, this card's not good. Don't play it. It's not worth it.
yeah, I don't really know what I would be doing with this card. Probably not much of anything, so I don't think you should be playing it. Just don't play that card. Pristine
Yeah.
Talisman. This is a mana rock that also has some life gain stapled into it.
This
Problem
one is
is,
annoying. Pristine Talisman is an annoying card to play against. It's good.
yeah, it's not bad. It is suffering from being in a set full of power stones.
It is,
However,
yes.
I'm not going to give it a bad grade purely on that metric. I just think it does suffer a little bit from that. I would put this at
Yeah.
a 4.5, with the caveat that you should only probably be playing this card if you are trying to ramp into bigger things. I don't really think you should be playing this if you're playing like some kind of low to the ground creature deck, or if you don't have like big things you're trying to ramp into. I don't really think though the 1 life is worth it. Otherwise, you need to be making use of that mana. And the fact is, the only things in this set worth casting that are like bigger than like 5 or 6 are the big dumb artifacts.
Yes. Yeah.
Self assembler, assembly worker. Were any of the 3 cards from earlier assembly workers?
There's a surprising number of assembly type worker. Yeah, so all three of the Urza's creatures, they're all assembly workers.
Fair.
And there's also a rare card called Autonomous Assembler, which is also an assembly worker.
Okay. Well, if you want to play a deck full of bad cards, this will make one slightly better. This will make it slightly better. Uh,
This one's also a 5 mana 4/4, so
yes. So the self assemblers combo with each other. So if you can find a way to collect them all, like Pokemon style, you can have something cool
yeah,
going. But
absolutely.
but by itself, it's not really that good of a card. It's just a 5 mana 4/4, which should be like replacement level.
Yeah.
Sigil of Valor, 2 mana, equip one. Whenever it attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other creature you control. This card is really good.
Yeah, this is an actual equipment payoff. I'm just so sad it's not actually in the set.
I mean, shit,
So
you don't even have to be playing equipment. You just put this on like any random dork, and like if you have
yeah,
three things,
absolutely.
+3/+3 for 1 mana when it attacks, that is quite a
Yeah.
bonus. Like you could
It
have a
has
lot
to
of
attack
things
a
pushed
line,
through.
which is the yeah. Has to attack a line, which is the reason I say equipment, because if you're attacking with one creature, buffing that one creature is pretty good. But
Yeah,
it's still, yeah, this card is really good and it will just end games pretty quickly, especially if you make a whole bunch of tokens.
quite strong. In fact, I would probably start it if you have a high creature count. around a 5.5 bordering on 6. Soul Guide Lantern is next. This is a 1 mana artifact that you can tap to sacrifice to have each opponent exile the graveyard. When it enters the battlefield, you exile a target card from a graveyard, and you can pay 1 and sacrifice it to draw a card.
This card can do things, but it's not. Don't bank on it. Like, it's a sideboard card against green black.
Yeah.
That's all this is.
It's also like a bit of a free roll because you can always just play it and crack it for 1.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
like,
it's 2 mana to cycle a card. It's just as good as, it's worse than Ichor Wellspring at that stage. So,
yeah. So, like, it starts out at like the replacement level because you can kind of free roll it, and then randomly with the enter the battlefield ability, you can mise your opponent's stuff, and then if you really, really think you need to, you can crack it to exile their whole graveyard. But more than likely, you're going to be just like getting rid of maybe one thing in their graveyard, and then cracking it to draw a card, which is perfectly fine. It doesn't hurt. Pretty low opportunity cost in a set that's this slow and not too punishing. Springleaf Drum is next. Pay 1 to play it. Then you can tap this and an untapped creature you control to add 1 mana of any color.
This is like the green creature, but better.
Springleaf Drum is a strong card. It is like that card, but better. But I don't really know. Well, I kind of forgot exactly where I was going with that line of thought, but I think Springleaf Drum kind of suffers.
Yeah. It's good with soldier tokens, but it's not doing everything you need it to because spells are so expensive.
And like the Power Stone tokens just don't require you to invest an entire card into them, and also don't require you to tap creatures.
Yeah.
So just not really a card for this set, if you ask me. Swiftfoot Boots is next. Hexproof and Haste. Hexproof is a strong ability. There are definitely creatures that giving Hexproof to is good, and giving Haste to some of those is also quite good.
Yeah.
You need to have creatures that you want to be protecting. However, the removal in the set's a little bit clunkier than normal. So Hexproof isn't exactly like the end-all be-all, since some of the cards just are never going to get blown up anyway because the removal's so sparse.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to give Swiftfoot Boots a passing 4.0, and then
the fact that they only equip as 1, you can move them very easily.
Yeah.
If something happens.
Yeah. Schematics. Oh, these are all just the same things. Are they?
Yes. Yeah.
Does that mean it's everything then? I think
that's all the uncommons. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that rounds off all of the cards in the set except for the lands. Now, in the land slot, we have at common, Evolving Wilds. Evolving Wilds is good. You should play that card if you're in 2 colors. Mana Fixing is at a premium, and having better mana is always good. You will probably be in 2 colors. Take this early and often. Takazia's Dig Site. This is a land that taps for colorless mana. You can pay 3 and tap it to surveil 1. You know what? This isn't bad.
Yeah, there's not much downside to running this unless you're looking to do, the monocolor synergy stuff.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's one of the few places where I want to play it because otherwise,
absolutely.
You're mostly going to be running 9/8 mana bases, and so cutting that down to 8/8 is really punishing, especially if you have anything with double colors. And some of those prototype costs are double colors. And the last thing you want to do is wait till you have almost enough mana to pay the big price to be able to pay the small price.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you are in monocolor, there's almost no cost to running one of these. And if you have an Evolving Wilds, you can probably run a Dig Site without too much issue. Also, there are decks that you'll just be able to put together. We have a whole lot of colorless stuff and not too many colored things, and you don't mind playing a few dig sites in there.
Yeah.
Uncommon, we have Demolition Field. Um, are
So
there
this
are
is
there rare
similar.
lands? Yeah, there's some rare
Rare
lands.
lands?
Yeah,
Yes, there are. There are
a few of them.
pain lands. I think it's the pain lands.
Yeah, they got
There's
a.
a few rare lands. Yeah.
I don't.
Importantly for people. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Importantly for people watching at home, Demolition Field is um Field of Ruin, except Field of Ruin ramps all your opponents, whereas Demolition Field just ramps the opponent you hit. So if you're playing Commander, try Demolition Field. You won't ramp the other two people play.
Yeah. Um, Demolition Field is not really a card most of the time. It's just a
It's not a
colorless
real
land.
card.
I
Yeah,
mean, just don't pick. There's so few things that are worth it. Just pick real cards. Pick things that matter. Creatures. Play a vanilla 2/2 over this, please.
exactly.
So as far as color ratings in the set go, what would you say the worst color is?
Oh,
Because I have it as a clear number one worst color.
I really didn't like the feeling of red, if I'm being honest. I know red has some really good cards, but I just wasn't as it was going through.
You got it right.
Okay, good.
Red is the worst color, which is sad because it's my second favorite color, and blue is the best
Mm,
color by not by a whole lot. It's like right in front of black, if you ask me. And I would say that blue is extremely strong, and it is my favorite
yeah,
color.
blue. Yeah, well, you win some, you lose some, I
Yeah,
suppose.
green. I want to say it rounds off third place, and white is fourth, but they're kind of like tied for third, fourth, and they're not like necessarily weak so much as they are not as strong as the others.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the thing that makes black hit second place is the fact that while the cards are not as individually powerful as blue, they do have enough synergy in and of themselves and not so much setup that you can kind of just put them in a deck and they'll do what they're supposed to do anyway. Like they're just
Yeah,
individually strong. White has a lot of setup in a lot of its cards. Green has a lot of issues with being a little clunky in the creatures, just not really doing a whole lot with them. But they're still stronger than red, which almost has nothing going for it, especially a common. Just so many of those things are just like medium as hell.
mm,
And then when it comes to the artifacts, well, there's just a lot of things there. There's a lot of things there. We went through all of them, judged them by their merits. It should be relatively intuitive to know when you should be playing them.
yeah,
I like this set. It looks interesting to me. Even though red does not look incredible, I'm still going to draft decks with red in them. I can't wait to get into the rares and mythics some other time, but I've had a whole lot of fun going through this, and I certainly hope that you have as well. Let me quickly take
absolutely.
a second to pull up. Oh, goodness. Oh, it looks like I can't do it that way. I'll have to pull it up the hard way on my computer.
Mm,
Yeah, I have a list of the best commons in here for each color, and I'm just going to run with those real quickly. So in red, for number one, the best common in red I feel is Excavation Explosion, and that's the 3 mana burn spell that gives you a Power Stone token.
pretty good.
Yeah,
Very good.
red doesn't have a lot of great commons. I was kind of scrambling to get
Yeah.
5 red commons I was super happy to play. I
Yes.
think the next
Yeah,
one is the
absolutely.
Dwarven Forge Chanter, the 2 drop with Prowess.
Yeah, that one is sweet.
Yeah. Followed by Unleash Shell.
Yeah.
Then Scrapwork Mutt right after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to be switching these around, but I put the Strong Bowl in 5th. I think it's going to actually move up to 4th.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Then white in 4th place, we have Prison Sentence, just a really good removal spell.
Yeah.
That actually does quite a bit since it also turns off activated abilities. Followed by Airlift Chaplain. That's the flyer that gets like a counter or gets you a creature.
Mm-hmm.
Then Aeronaut Cavalry, which is the flyer that can is 4 or 5 worth of stats as long
Puts
as you have a
counter.
soldier. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Followed by Deadly Riposte, the one that deals 3 to a tapped creature. And then Warlord's Elite, that's the one for 3 mana that you have to tap 2 things in order to play. Yeah. In green, we have Epic Confrontation in first place. It's just,
Yep.
your green removal spell. Very good. Argothian Sprite in second, because it's a 2 that has value in the late game. Argothian Opportunist in third place, the one that makes the Power Stone.
Yes.
I think this was an early draft of it. I need to take out number 4 here because for some reason in number 4, I guess I hadn't looked at the rest yet. I had a placeholder for Sentinel Stalwart. It turns out that the mana fixing in this set is just not really there, and that it doesn't need to be there. You just need to play different decks. Blanchwood Prowler is in the last place here, and I think that's definitely a solid one.
That's definitely deserving of being up there.
We have Black Scrapwork Rager, even though it is only black in the Unearth cost. I still think it deserves to be up there because it's black in spirit. It's pretty obviously a card that you get the most out of when you're black.
Yeah, you get your full value out of the black.
Yeah. Second is Overwhelming Remorse. Best common removal spells to see print in years. You're going to be happy paying 4 mana for it, and it'll often be less than that. Exile's good, and it's instant speed. Followed by Disfigure. Extremely versatile, extremely cheap card. Really hard to make that card bad. Then Power Stone Fracture. There's just a lot of stuff you can do with that card. You can sacrifice Power Stones in expendable creatures to get rid of stuff that you don't like. And then Gixian Skullflayer, because it turns out having 3 things in your graveyard is relatively easy, and eventually this is going to tussle with like big things, and all that for a decently sized body on its own. And finally, we have blue with the number 1, and in my opinion, best common in the set, Scatter Ray.
Yes, absolutely. So versatile.
The only thing I wonder is what the hell Ray did to deserve this. Poor guy.
Maybe he's just scatterbrained.
I guess so. The poor guy, it's all over the place. Mightstone's animation in second, because turning your random Power Stone into a 4/4 and also draw a card, really good. God forbid they have to trade for the thing that already drew a card. Wing Commando. So, like, Mightstone's animation is kind of like, with some setup, a 4/4 Phyrexian Rager. So when you think about it like that, and especially in like blue, there's all sorts of like 1/1s running around in addition to Power Stones. It becomes pretty easy to turn that into a positive for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wing Commando. That's the 2/2 flying with prowess. Just extremely aggressive card. Very good. Fourth place, we have Latinam Adept. That's the one where whenever you draw your second card, it gets a counter. Yeah. And then Air Marshal. Oh, yeah. Air Marshal was the one that... no, that's the one that gave flying to creatures. Soldiers specifically.
Oh, that's right. Yes, activated
I mean,
flying.
The further I went through the set in blue, the more I realized, like, oh, there really just isn't that much that either flies or handles flying very well. So giving like 1 or 2 creatures flying in the late game is a good way to just push through damage.
Yeah.
And then as far as artifacts go, I didn't put any of those in any kind of ranked order, but I gotta say, there's some pretty cool stuff here, and I can't wait to draft it. I'm doing it on Friday night, unless I don't feel good enough to do so, and I'm still going to be getting a pre-release kit either way. New play group, new LGS, very, very happy about it. Are you going to be attending a pre-release?
Absolutely, I'll be attending my Friday night pre-release, the competitive. So,
That's super duper cool.
It's going to be a great time. Yeah.
Well, you should tell the people anything that you have going on, anything that you'd like to shill for, your channel,
absolutely,
everything.
Yeah. Well, so you can find me on Twitter at Laura is Trent, and hear me out now. We've just released today as we're recording, Love from the Loam, which is my YouTube channel, which is coming out, and I'm going to be talking all about Cube and that sort of thing. So, Love from the Loam on Twitter and Love from the Loam on YouTube as well.
I am absolutely overjoyed. I can't wait to listen to that on the way to work. Because that's what I
Ah,
do on the
thank
way
you.
to work. I listen to stuff since I can't look down at my phone, and it's boring to just drive for an hour.
Yeah. It's just talking about one of the featured cubes at the moment, but once I get a bit more script writing done, then I'll have some more scripted videos that'll be better for podcasting.
Of course, and you can find me on Twitter at honestly unusual, or you can of course find me here on this YouTube channel. Once the set comes out, I'll be releasing a lot more regularly. I got a little bit burnt out on DMU and just took a lot of stuff onto my plate since I started writing for Hipsters of the Coast, but now I'm getting back into the swing of things, and I can't wait to draft this set so many times that I get tired of it.
Absolutely.
Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. I hope that you've enjoyed this limited set review. I hope that this can be of use to you. And look out, because one way or another there will be stuff about the mythics and rares coming eventually. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please feel free to leave a like, a comment, or even a subscription. Have a good night.